the dark world of Silver. Fong under the shroud of a moonless sky, a world of ruthless power and hidden secrets awakens. Welcome to Silver Fong. This is not a tale of light or hope, but a journey deep into a realm where pain, betrayal, and raw determination are woven into every heartbeat. The night air is cold and heavy, echoing with the distant howls of wolves who have long forgotten the meaning of mercy. In Silver Fong, every shadow holds a story. Every gust of wind carries a memory, and every step taken by its inhabitants is a dance on the edge of destiny. In the heart of this dark world stands Zara Nightshade, a solitary figure marked by scars both seen and unseen. Once nothing more than a pawn in a brutal game, she has endured a lifetime of torment at the hands of the notorious Blackwood quadruplets. Jackson, Kale, Riker, and Dante, names that once sent shivers down the spines of even the bravest, ruled this pack with an iron fist, leaving destruction in their wake. For years, Zara was their punching bag, a symbol of weakness and defiance. Yet beneath the surface of her suffering lay a spark of rebellion, waiting for the right moment to ignite. Tonight, that moment has arrived. As the wind whispers ancient secrets through the skeletal trees, the atmosphere brims with an unsettling mix of dread and anticipation. Every creature in Silver Fong senses that something is amiss, a hidden shift in fate that will shatter the status quo. The cool night air, heavy with the scent of damp earth and distant fires, carries a promise of change. And in this moment of charged silence, Zara stands at the crossroads of her past and an uncertain future. The pack's territory, vast and unforgiving, is cloaked in darkness. Here, beneath the oppressive gaze of towering pines and the watchful eyes of the pack's elders, every creature battles its own inner demons. For Zara, the struggle is not merely against the cruelty of her tormentors, but against the haunting memories of years spent feeling insignificant and alone. Her heart, battered by relentless rejection and heartbreak, yearns for a truth that has always seemed just out of reach. Tonight, however, that truth begins to surface, challenging everything she thought she knew about herself and her destiny. The ground beneath her bare feet feels cold and unyielding, a constant reminder of the harsh reality of Silver Fong. Each step is a testament to the survival of a soul that refuses to be broken. As she moves, the crisp sound of fallen leaves and snapping twigs underfoot punctuates the silence, like a rhythmic drumbeat heralding the approach of a fated confrontation. The very air seems to vibrate with tension, as if the night itself is holding its breath in anticipation of what is to come. In the distance, a grand bonfire roars to life, casting flickering shadows that dance wildly over the rugged terrain. Its glow illuminates the twisted silhouettes of ancient trees and the wary faces of wolves gathered for a ritual that binds them all. It is here, amidst the crackling flames and swirling mists, that Zara finds herself drawn into a destiny that is as mysterious as it is daunting. The fire's light not only reveals the harsh beauty of the land, but also mirrors the inner fire that has long smoldered within her. A fire that is now ready to burst into an inferno of rebellion and transformation. As she approaches the gathering, Zara's eyes dart nervously from one dark figure to the next. Every muscle in her body is taut with a mix of fear and defiance. The faces that greet her are etched with suspicion and something more. An unspoken acknowledgement that she is different, that she carries a weight beyond mere survival. The murmurs of the pack, low and urgent, seem to speak of old wounds and ancient prophecies, of a time when destinies were written in the stars and bloodlines carried the secrets of forgotten powers. Yet even amid this palpable tension, there is an undeniable allure to the mystery that surrounds her. Each whispered word, every flicker of firelight, and the cold, calculating gaze of an elder evoke a sense of awe and trepidation. Here, in this forsaken corner of the world, Zara is about to confront the very essence of her being. The brutal past that once defined her is giving way to a future she has fought so hard to claim. A future where pain becomes power, and isolation transforms into fierce, unyielding strength. In Silver Fong, survival is a daily battle, and the scars of yesterday serve as the armor for tomorrow. As Zara stands on the threshold of a new dawn, her heart beats like a war drum, echoing the cries of 1,000 souls who have dared to dream of freedom. Tonight, the darkness is not an end, but a beginning, a prelude to a story of redemption, defiance, and the indomitable will to rise above it all. Prepare yourself for a journey where every word is a promise of transformation, where every pause leaves a lingering echo of hope and defiance. This is the dark, haunting world of Silver Fong, a world where destiny is carved out of struggle, and every soul is destined to either break or be reborn. And as Zara takes her first step into this night of reckoning, the stage is set for a saga that will challenge fate itself, leaving an indelible mark on all who dare to listen. The Curse of Abuse, Zara's Early Years. In the unforgiving world of Silver Fong, Zara's early life was a relentless storm of cruelty. From the moment she could remember, the Blackwood quadruplets ruled her existence. Their names, Jackson, Cale, Riker, and Dante, echoed like a curse through every dark corridor of the Pack's territory. Every day, their power was on display, a constant reminder that Zara was nothing more than a plaything, a target for their cruelty. She woke to cold mornings and harsh words. The quadruplets took perverse pleasure in breaking her spirit. Their laughter was cruel, echoing off barren walls, as they tormented her in public and in private. Zara's body bore the marks of their abuse. Bruises blossomed like dark flowers, each a testament to the pain inflicted by hands that cared nothing. For her, every bruise was a story of humiliation, of defeat, of being made to feel worthless. In the training grounds, she was forced to prove herself in battles she never chose. The quadruplets would stand in a semicircle, their eyes glinting with malice, daring her to rise against them. They pushed her to the ground with brutal force. Their sneers and mocking words became a daily litany that chipped away at her confidence. "You're too weak," they would whisper. "You will never be one of us." With each blow, Zara's body trembled not just from the pain, but from the knowledge that she was utterly alone. The Pack's territory was a stage for endless cruelty. Public humiliation was their favorite instrument of power. In front of their fellow Pack members, Zara was paraded as a broken soul. They made her the punching bag, a symbol of the Pack's dominance. Her attempts to fight back were met with swift, punishing retribution. Short, sharp strikes, both physical and verbal, were delivered without mercy. In the harsh light of day, Zara's silent screams echoed in her mind long after the assault had ended. Yet, behind her eyes lay a simmering fire. Even in her lowest moments, a spark of defiance burned. Every insult, every lash of cruelty stoked that flame, even as the quadruplets tried to snuff it out. They wanted her submission, wanted her spirit to crumble like the brittle autumn leaves beneath her feet. But deep inside, Zara clung to a fragile hope that one day, fate might turn against her oppressors. Her isolation was complete. The Pack's brutal hierarchy left her with no allies, no comfort. The world around her was dark and unforgiving. Every whispered comment, every disdainful look from her tormentors reinforced a single, devastating truth. She was insignificant. In the silence of her small, cold room, Zara would trace her scars, each mark a memory of cruelty. They were constant reminders that her life had been stolen from her, stolen by those who were meant to lead, who were supposed to protect. Still, amid this darkness, there was a lesson being taught. The endless cycle of abuse was carving a deeper resilience into her soul. Each harsh day was a crucible, forging a woman who would one day rise from the ashes of her shattered past. The abuse was relentless, but it was also the cruel teacher of survival. Every humiliation whispered in her ears became a silent vow that she would not be defined by her pain. The pack members, with their cold, unyielding hearts, never imagined that the fragile girl they tormented could harbor such inner strength. They saw only weakness, never the budding storm within. The cruelty was systematic, a carefully orchestrated display of power meant to keep her in perpetual submission. But the seeds of rebellion were sown in the fertile soil of her suffering. By the time Zara reached her 18th birthday, the weight of years of abuse had transformed her from a silent victim into someone with a flicker of defiant resolve. The bitter taste of humiliation and the constant reminder of her perceived insignificance were the very elements that would soon catalyze a dramatic shift in her destiny. Unbeknownst to her tormentors, the girl they once mocked was preparing to break the chains that bound her. Each day of her early years, marked by cruelty and despair, laid the foundation for a dramatic twist, a twist that would shatter the cruel cycle and reveal a power hidden deep within. The harsh lessons of the past were about to converge with destiny, setting the stage for a revelation that would redefine Zara's life forever. The fateful full moon. Revelation on her 18th birthday. The night of her 18th birthday arrived like a tempest, dark and all-consuming. Under a sky awash with silver light, the full moon hung heavy, a silent witness to destiny. This night, the air crackled with an energy that was both ominous and electrifying. Zara stood alone, heart pounding, as if the very universe had aligned to change her fate. The moon's glow cast long, eerie shadows across the rugged terrain of Silver Fong. Every blade of grass, every twisted branch was illuminated in stark, haunting detail. It was as though nature itself had paused, holding its breath in anticipation. Tonight was different. Tonight, Zara felt an inexplicable pull, a magnetic force drawing her toward a destiny that was as cruel as it was mysterious. In the midst of the ritual gathering, surrounded by the eyes of her pack, Zara's world tilted. The air vibrated with an unseen power, and a shiver ran down her spine. Her body, once fragile and battered, began to tremble with a strange, overwhelming sensation. The familiar pain of abuse was momentarily replaced by a burning internal fire, an energy that coursed through her veins, demanding to be acknowledged. Then came the revelation, a cruel irony that would forever alter her existence. One by one, the Blackwood quadruplets stepped forward. Their presence, once a symbol of unyielding dominance, now felt both inevitable and profoundly tragic. With a deliberate, almost ritualistic calm, they advanced, their eyes fixed upon her as if sealing a fated contract. Zara's breath hitched. She could feel the ancient pull of the mate bond, not just from one, but from all four of them. It was as if the moon itself had whispered a terrible secret into her soul. The quadruplets, with all their power and cruelty, were bound to her in a way that defied reason. In that surreal moment, love and betrayal became inextricably intertwined. The very idea of being simultaneously desired and despised was a paradox too potent to ignore. The truth was revealed in a whisper of cold inevitability. Zara was their destined mate. Not just one mate, but all four, a cruel twist of fate that turned her life upside down. The pack watched in a frozen hush as the revelation unfolded. Every eye, every heart, seemed to hold its breath. The ritual, once a celebration of the natural order, had transformed into a dramatic, almost sacrilegious spectacle. Zara's heart pounded with a mix of terror and defiant acceptance. She had known her life was a relentless cycle of abuse, but never had she imagined that fate would tether her so cruelly to her tormentors. The moonlight revealed the stark, shattering truth on her skin, a luminous mark, igniting with the power of the night. It was a sign that transcended the physical, a signal from the ancient forces that governed Silver Fong. The cruel irony was inescapable. The very men who had broken her, who had made her life a living hell, now held the key to her destiny. Their eyes, once filled with malice, now bore the weight of an unspoken command. Love, betrayal, and destiny were woven into the fabric of that fateful night, creating a tapestry of emotions that was as overwhelming as it was tragic. In that moment, Zara's soul quivered. The revelation was a brutal mix of horror and unexpected liberation. It was as though every tear, every cry of anguish from her past, had led to this one dramatic turning point. The full moon shone down on her, an indifferent guardian to a fate that was both cruel and transformative. The connection was immediate and undeniable, a force that could neither be denied nor escaped. Yet, even as the weight of this cruel destiny pressed upon her, a new ember of rebellion was ignited within Zara. The revelation, as painful as it was also a catalyst. It forced her to confront the duality of her existence, the oppressed girl of her early years, and the emerging force of change now stirring within her. The moon bore witness to her transformation, an awakening of power born from the deepest wounds. On that fateful night, as the pack's eyes bore into her with a mix of desire and disdain, Zara understood that her life would never be the same. Bound by destiny to those who had tormented her, she now faced a choice that would set the course for everything to come. The night was heavy with foreboding, and the full moon's glow hinted at a future both tragic and transformative. Flight in secret, the burden of a hidden child. Overwhelmed by humiliation and desperate to escape, Zara fled into the cold night, her heart pounding with betrayal and fear. Every step away from the pack was a step toward uncertain freedom, a freedom tainted by the bitter taste of rejection. The echo of derisive laughter and the venomous whispers of the quadruplets chased her into the darkness. Under the unyielding gaze of the full moon, she ran with no destination in mind, only a burning need to leave behind the life that had imprisoned her. The forest swallowed her whole as she pushed deeper into its shadowy embrace. The crunch of dry leaves and snapping twigs underfoot served as her only companions on that harrowing journey. With every frantic step, Zara's mind churned with memories of the pack's cruelty. Their cold, unfeeling eyes had seared into her soul, marking her as a perpetual outcast, a pawn forever bound by a fate she never chose. Yet amid the overwhelming despair, a secret burned quietly within her. Unbeknownst to the pack, as she fled that fateful night, Zara carried a secret that would shatter everything. Deep within her, a new life had begun. A pregnancy imbued with an ancient, mysterious power. The revelation was as shocking as it was inexplicable. In the midst of her escape, the raw pain of humiliation mingled with an unexpected sense of awe and terror as she realized that her body was nurturing something extraordinary. This hidden child was not just a symbol of her broken past, but the harbinger of a future steeped in both wonder and danger. In the solitude of the forest, away from the prying eyes of her tormentors, Zara collapsed beside a cold, murmuring brook. The night was silent, save for the gentle ripple of water over smooth stones and the distant call of nocturnal creatures. It was here, in this moment of isolation, that the weight of her secret pressed down on her like an anchor. Her trembling fingers grazed her stomach, and she felt a subtle electric warmth, a pulse of life and power awakening within. That warmth was the first sign of the ancient force that now resided inside her, a force that would forever alter the course of her destiny. Tears mingled with the rain as Zara allowed herself a moment of vulnerable introspection. The humiliation she had suffered at the hands of the quadruplets was etched into every fiber of her being, but this newfound secret stirred something deep within, a seed of transformation that promised to bloom into unbridled power. She recalled the way their rejection had shattered her, the piercing cruelty of their words that had left her feeling worthless. And yet, within that despair, the promise of renewal whispered to her, urging her to rise above the agony and embrace the potential that now resided inside her. the secret of her pregnancy was both a curse and a blessing. It carried with it the ancient legacy of powers long forgotten, a legacy that, if awakened, could reshape the very fabric of the werewolf world. Zara's mind raced with conflicting emotions. The burden of this secret was immense. It was a constant reminder of the dark, twisted fate that had been forced upon her. Yet, it was also a beacon of hope, a promise of change, and the potential to overturn the cruel order that had long held sway over her life. As she lay by the brook, the cool night air and the soft lullaby of the water seemed to ease the turmoil within her, even if only for a fleeting moment. In that temporary respite, Zara's thoughts turned to the dangerous future that lay ahead. The ancient power coursing through her veins was not a gift freely given. It demanded recognition, a reckoning that would shake the foundations of everything. She knew. The quadruplets, the pack, and even the elders would soon learn that the oppressed can rise, that the neglected can wield a power born of both suffering and defiance. Every heartbeat was a reminder that her life was no longer her own, that she carried within her the potential for both unparalleled strength and catastrophic upheaval. The path before her was shrouded in uncertainty, yet it shimmered with the possibility of redemption. As the night deepened, so too did the sense of foreboding. Zara knew that hiding was only a temporary refuge. The moment of reckoning would come, and with it, the dangerous forces that had long lain dormant would be unleashed. The very future of Silver Fang teetered on the edge of this secret, and its revelation could either save or doom the world she had known. Determination began to replace despair in Zara's heart. With the secret of her unborn child, she was no longer merely a victim of cruelty. She was the bearer of a legacy that could redefine destiny itself. The inner turmoil that had once threatened to consume her was slowly being transformed into a burning resolve. Each painful memory, each tear shed in isolation, had laid the groundwork for a metamorphosis that she could no longer deny. In the depths of that shadowy forest, Zara made a silent vow. No longer would she allow herself to be the victim of a fate dictated by cruelty and rejection. She would harness the ancient power within her, nurture the hidden life that had awakened inside her, and prepare for the inevitable confrontation that loomed on the horizon. The future was dangerous and unpredictable, but it was hers to shape. The seeds of transformation had been sown in the darkest of nights, and as dawn approached, Zara could feel the stirring of a force that would soon become unstoppable. With a deep, steadying breath, she rose from her temporary refuge. The path ahead was uncertain and fraught with peril, but Zara's eyes now burned with a fierce, unyielding light, a promise of revolution and the dawn of a new era. The burden of her hidden child was heavy, but it was also a catalyst for the radical change that was to come. And so, under the silent watch of the ancient trees, Zara began her journey, one that would lead her into a destiny as mysterious and formidable as the power that now thrived within her. Dark secrets and betrayals, unraveling the past. In the quiet aftermath of her desperate flight, Zara found herself alone beneath the ancient canopy of a forgotten forest. The trees whispered secrets of ages past as if they held the memories of every betrayal that had ever stained Silver Fang. The darkness around her was no longer just the absence of light. It was a living tapestry of hidden truths, waiting for her to uncover them. In these isolated hours, fragments of the past began to stir in Zara's mind. There were murmurs of long-hidden treachery within the pack, a sinister undercurrent that ran deeper than the cruelty of the Blackwood quadruplets. The pack's unity, once assumed unbreakable, now seemed riddled with fractures and secrets. Whispers of betrayal floated in the shadows, hinting at alliances formed in deceit and promises made only to be shattered by ambition. Zara recalled furtive glances exchanged among the elders, subtle nods in dim corridors, and murmured conversations that never reached her ears. These were not the marks of a pack united by loyalty, but of one crumbling from within. the seeds of betrayal had been sown long before she was born. As she pieced together these scattered clues, a chilling realization took root. Her suffering had been orchestrated by forces far more dangerous than the quadruplets' blatant cruelty. An old enemy, long thought vanquished or forgotten, now emerged from the depths of this hidden history. The name came to her like a ghost on the wind, a name that promised retribution and a legacy of darkness. This enemy was not a simple rival, but a specter of ancient power, whose presence had lurked at the fringes of Silver Fong for generations. Their influence had shaped events from behind the scenes, manipulating fate with a cold, calculating precision. The thought sent a shiver down Zara's spine. Here, in the solitude of her exile, she realized that her path was entwined with forces far beyond the petty cruelties she had endured. This enemy had not only orchestrated betrayals within the pack, but had also sown discord among those who claimed to protect the natural order. Their dark hand had guided the destinies of many, and now it loomed over her like an inevitable storm. Conflicted emotions warred within her heart. Part of her yearned for vengeance, a fierce, burning desire to strike back at those who had used her, betrayed her, and manipulated her life. The memory of each insult, each bruise inflicted by the quadruplets, fueled this fire. Yet, as the revelations unfolded, another voice whispered of forgiveness, a painful, almost impossible idea in a world steeped in blood and betrayal. Could she ever free herself from the chains of resentment, or would her soul forever be marred by the darkness of the past? As Zara grappled with these conflicting urges, the supernatural nature of her newfound power began to reveal itself. It was as if the ancient energies that had awakened within her were tied to the old enemy, a force that had been dormant until now, waiting for the right moment to rise. The whispers in the forest grew louder, echoing in a language older than time. They spoke of destiny and fate, of a power that transcended mortal cruelty. Each whisper hinted at a secret legacy, a promise that Zara's bloodline was not cursed, but destined to change the course of the supernatural world. The interplay of light and shadow in the forest mirrored the battle within her. There was an undeniable allure to the idea that her pain might be transformed into strength, that every betrayal she had suffered could be repurposed into a force for change. Yet, the price of such power was steep. To harness it fully, she would have to confront not only the enemies that lurked in the darkness, but also the remnants of her own shattered innocence. In the stillness of that haunted woodland, Zara's thoughts turned to the faces of those who had wronged her. The quadruplets, with their cold eyes and twisted smiles, were but the surface of a deeper rot. The true betrayal lay in the very structure of Silver Fong, a legacy built on secrets, manipulation, and the relentless pursuit of power. Each memory of past humiliation was now a piece of a larger puzzle, one that pointed to an ancient conflict between light and darkness, destiny and free will. The air grew heavier with the weight of this realization. Shadows shifted around her, as if in response to her inner turmoil, and the forest itself seemed to pulse with an eerie energy. The boundaries between past and present blurred. Every step forward felt like a descent into the depths of a history written in blood and sorrow. Yet, with every beat of her heart, Zara felt herself growing more resolute. The betrayals of the wide past, as painful as they were, had prepared her for this very moment, a moment when she could choose to reclaim her destiny. The path ahead was fraught with peril and uncertainty. The old enemy still lurked in the shadows, and the dark secrets of Silver Fong beckoned with promises of both destruction and rebirth. Zara knew that her journey was far from over. The truth of her lineage, the full measure of her supernatural power, and the dangerous legacy of betrayal would soon collide in a way that could shatter the very foundations of the pack. In that charged silence, as the ancient trees bore silent witness, Zara made a silent vow. Whether she chose forgiveness or vengeance, she would not be a passive victim of the past. Instead, she would embrace the complexity of her emotions, harness the mysterious power that coursed through her veins, and face the looming threat with unyielding resolve. The dark secrets of Silver Fong had been unraveled, and now, armed with the bitter knowledge of betrayal, Zara was ready to step into a future where destiny was hers to command. The training grounds. The cold wind bit at Zara's skin as she stepped onto the gritty training ground, a barren arena where pain and determination collided. The ground was hard and unforgiving, a patchwork of dirt and scattered gravel that echoed every step. Around her, a semicircle of wolves and warriors waited, their eyes glinting with anticipation and cruelty. It was a place where only the strong survived, a proving ground for those destined to rule Silver Fong. In the chill morning air, Zara's heart pounded like a war drum. She could feel every heartbeat as it throbbed in her ears, a steady reminder of both fear and fierce determination. The atmosphere was thick with tension. Each breath was laced with the metallic tang of sweat and the earthy scent of damp soil. There was no escape here. Every gaze was fixed on her, a silent chorus of judgment and scorn. At the center of the circle stood Jackson Blackwood, the embodiment of merciless power. His golden eyes burned with a mix of amusement and disdain, reflecting a cruel confidence that cut through the cold like a sharpened blade. His presence was overwhelming, his aura one of dominance and unyielding authority. With a smirk playing on his lips, he taunted her, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Come on, Nightshade. I thought you wanted to be a warrior. Show us what you've got." The words hit Zara like a blow, each syllable a reminder of years spent as the pack's punching bag. The sneers of the surrounding warriors and the low, mocking laughter of wolves were like daggers in her soul. Yet, as the cold sting of humiliation spread through her, something within Zara sparked, a defiant fire that had long been smoldering beneath the ashes of her pain. This was her moment. She would no longer be the victim of their cruelty. Muscles tensed, and with a steely resolve, Zara lunged forward. The world seemed to slow as she moved, a blur of determination amid the frozen tableau. But Jackson was swift and calculated. With a graceful sidestep that belied his savage intent, he dodged her desperate attack. In a swift, brutal motion, he slammed his knee into her ribs. The impact was explosive, a searing burst of pain that sent her sprawling onto the rough ground. The cold earth pressed against her skin, mingling with the burning heat of agony that radiated from her bruised body. The roar of the pack was deafening, a cacophony of cruelty that filled the air with bitter triumph. Yet, even as the pain threatened to overwhelm her, Zara refused to yield. She coughed, dust mingling with the sweat that slicked her skin, and pushed herself back onto her feet. Her fists clenched, not in submission, but as a promise, a vow that she would rise, no matter how many times she was knocked down. Jackson's voice rang out again, mocking and relentless. "You're too slow, Nightshade. You'll never be a warrior like this." His words were a caustic lash, each syllable echoing in the pit of her stomach. But Zara's eyes, bright with raw defiance, burned with a silent fury. With every agonizing breath, she felt the weight of every insult, every bruise, fueling a resolve that was impossible to extinguish. The training ground was more than just a battleground for physical prowess. It was a crucible for the spirit. Every harsh blow and every cold, dismissive laugh was a lesson etched into her soul. As she squared off once more with Jackson, the air between them seemed to thicken. The crisp scent of the morning mixed with the bitter aroma of fear and anticipation. The crowd fell into a hush, as if the world itself held its breath, waiting for the outcome of this titanic clash. Zara's mind raced with memories, each one a shard of pain from a past filled with humiliation. But now, in the presence of Jackson's unwavering cruelty, those memories transformed into a well of strength. The intensity of the moment was overwhelming, every nerve alive with the electricity of defiance. Her muscles tightened in a silent promise to herself. She would fight, not just for survival, but for every moment she had ever been diminished. The clash was imminent. In that frozen heartbeat before action resumed, the world narrowed to the single potent confrontation between her and Jackson. The ground trembled underfoot, as if echoing her inner turmoil, and the cold wind carried the unspoken challenge, a dare for her to rise above the torment. Jackson's expression, once smug with superiority, now hinted at a wary respect, as if he sensed that the woman before him was on the verge of transformation. As the silence shattered and the battle resumed, Zara moved with a ferocity that belied her battered form. Every strike, every defiant push against the relentless force of Jackson's assaults, was a declaration. She was no longer the meek girl of her past. In that bitter arena, beneath the indifferent gaze of a harsh morning sky, Zara's determination blazed brighter than ever. Each pulse of pain became a stepping stone toward her destiny, a future where she would no longer be defined by the cruelty of others. In the heart of the training ground, amid the echoes of brutality and the raw, unfiltered display of power, Zara was reborn. The cold, gritty arena bore witness to a metamorphosis, a spark of change that promised to shatter the chains of her past. And as she locked eyes with Jackson once more, the challenge was clear. Rise above the pain or be consumed by it. The battle had only just begun, and every moment pulsed with the potential of a destiny waiting to be claimed. Humiliation and defiance. The first rejection. In the frozen grip of that brutal morning, the training ground became a theater of degradation and raw pain. The air, cold and unyielding, carried a fine dust that clung to every surface, silent witness to the cruelty unfolding before all eyes. Zara stood at the center of it all, her resolve trembling like a flicker of flame amid a storm of scorn. The eyes of the pack bore into her, each gaze a silent, merciless judgment, while the murmurs and mocking laughter of her tormentors swirled like a bitter wind. Jackson's challenge had come as a cruel invitation, a mocking dare that shattered the fragile veneer of dignity Zara had clung to for so long. His golden eyes glinted with a twisted pleasure as he stepped forward, his voice dripping with scorn. "Show us what you've got, Nightshade. Prove you're more than just a weakling." Each word was a lash, a reminder of every moment she had been belittled and broken. In that instant, the ground seemed to shift beneath her, as if the very earth conspired to echo the sting of his insult. Without warning, the mocking challenge erupted into brutal reality. In a blur of movement, Jackson's strike connected, a savage, calculated blow that slammed into her ribs with excruciating force. The impact sent Zara crashing into the unforgiving dirt, the coarse grains biting into her skin as she sprawled in a heap. Pain exploded across her body, an all-consuming agony that blurred her vision and stole her breath away. The harsh scent of dust mingled with the metallic tang of blood, a testament to the violence of the moment. Around her, the pack's taunts rang out in a chorus of cruelty. Voices overlapped with jeers and bitter laughter, each one a knife cutting, deeper into her wounded pride. "Weak girl," they jeered, their words echoing off the cold walls of the training ground. In that moment, the cacophony of derision was almost deafening, a relentless barrage that threatened to drown out any hope of redemption. Yet amid the overwhelming pain and humiliation, something fierce and unexpected stirred within Zara. As she lay there, every fiber of her being searing with hurt and indignation, she felt a spark ignite in the depths of her soul. That spark was not merely a reaction to physical torment. It was the birth of a rebellion, a silent promise that she would never again allow herself to be defined by their cruelty. The memory of each sneer, each mocking whisper, kindled a raw defiance that pulsed through her veins like a secret weapon. Slowly, painfully, Zara pushed herself to her feet. Her body trembled under the strain of fresh injury, but her eyes shone with a new intensity, a glare that spoke of unyielding determination. Each step was a defiant act of resistance, a rejection of the role they had imposed on her as nothing more than a victim. The dust that coated her skin seemed to fall away as she rose, revealing a woman who was no longer content to endure the abuse of those who considered themselves superior. The pack's laughter faltered for a moment, as if they sensed the shift in her demeanor. Yet Jackson's face remained a mask of cruel amusement. He circled her slowly, his eyes never leaving her face, scrutinizing every sign of pain and rebellion. "You still think you can fight back, Nightshade?" He sneered, his tone mocking yet laced with a grudging curiosity. His words, meant to belittle, instead fueled the fire within her. Zara's mind raced as she fought through the haze of pain. Every insult she had ever suffered, every humiliation that had been forced upon her, converged into a single, resolute thought. She would never be their victim again. The agony was real. The scars were many. But they were also the crucible in which her future strength was being forged. She remembered each painful moment as a lesson, a building block in the foundation of a power that was slowly awakening inside her. In that charged moment, the training ground transformed from a place of torment into a proving ground for something far greater. The jeers of the pack, the sneers of her tormentors, even the bitter taste of blood and dust, all became the backdrop for her rising defiance. With every breath, she vowed to reclaim her identity from the clutches of humiliation. The searing pain in her ribs, the sting of each insult, they were not her end, but the beginning of a transformation. As Jackson's mocking challenge echoed in the air, Zara's eyes narrowed with a fierce determination that could not be quelled. Her voice, hoarse and unsteady at first, rose in a silent vow. No longer would she cower or crumble under the weight of their cruelty. In the depths of her despair, a seed of rebellion had been planted, one that promised a future where she would stand unyielding, where her pain would metamorphose into power. The winds of change stirred around her, carrying with them the faint scent of destiny. In that grim, dust-laden arena, the first rejection had not broken her spirit. It had awakened it. Zara's heart beat with the fierce rhythm of defiance, a battle cry against a world that had long sought to suppress her. The promise of something extraordinary, a transformation that would shatter the chains of her past, lingered in the air, ready to burst forth at the moment she allowed it. And so, in that pivotal, raw moment of humiliation and defiance, Zara took her first steps on the path toward her destiny. The pain was fierce, the rejection brutal, but within it lay the undeniable spark of rebellion, a spark that would one day blaze into a power strong enough to reshape her world and silence those who dared to call her weak. The moonlight ceremony. An unsettling bond. Under a vault of silvery light, the moon rose high above Silver Fong, casting an otherworldly glow that transformed the rugged clearing into a stage of mystery and fate. Tonight, the grand moonlight ceremony was underway, a time-honored ritual when unmated wolves, their hearts and souls laid bare, gathered to feel the potent pull of the mate bond. The air was electric with anticipation, as every member of the pack converged around a roaring bonfire, its flames dancing and flickering in the cool night breeze. The clearing was arranged in a perfect circle, each position marked with sacred symbols etched into the earth, a design that spoke of ancient traditions and the delicate balance between destiny and desire. The rhythmic beat of distant drums and the hushed murmur of whispered prayers lent the night an almost hypnotic cadence. Every detail of the scene exuded a sense of ritualistic solemnity, yet beneath it all lay the promise of unpredictable magic. Zara stood at the periphery of the gathering, her heart pounding a frantic tattoo in her chest. For years, she had been the silent witness to the pack's rites, an outcast whose fate was deemed unworthy of the sacred bond. Yet tonight, something was different. As the ceremony commenced, an invisible current stirred within her, a sensation, both foreign and intensely familiar. It was as if the very forces of destiny were reaching out to her, whispering secrets that defied everything she had ever known. In the center of the circle, the quadruplets, Jackson, Cale, Riker, and Dante, stepped forward with a measured grace that belied their reputation for cruelty. Their eyes, gleaming under the moon's ethereal light, locked onto Zara with an intensity that sent shivers down her spine. Each of them exuded a raw, magnetic power, and as they moved closer, an unsettling energy began to gather in the space between them. For a long, suspended moment, time seemed to stand still. Zara's senses sharpened, the crackling of the bonfire, the cool caress of the night air, and the faint rustling of leaves all converged into a singular, overwhelming awareness. And then it happened, against all expectations and in stark defiance of the world she had known. Zara felt a sudden, irresistible pull from each of the quadruplets. It was as if her very soul was being drawn into a vortex of contradictory emotions, where love, fate, and betrayal mingled in a dangerous, intoxicating blend. Her heart raced uncontrollably, pounding against her ribcage with the urgency of 1,000 unspoken desires. In that moment, her body betrayed her as the mate bond, an ancient force that dictated the destinies of werewolves, wrapped around her in a chilling embrace. The sensation was both overwhelming and surreal. A deep, primal connection surged through her veins, binding her inexplicably to all 4 of them at once. It was a connection that defied logic, igniting a fierce inner storm that left her breathless and trembling. The pack fell silent. Every eye in the clearing was fixed upon her, their expressions a mixture of awe, disbelief, and something darker, an unspoken recognition that a powerful, supernatural force was at work. The ritual, which was meant to celebrate the natural order, now teetered on the edge of a revelation that could shatter the very foundations of Silver Fong. In the eerie stillness, the only sound was the soft, almost imperceptible beating of Zara's heart, echoing like a war drum in the still night. For a heartbeat, she felt suspended between worlds, a fragile mortal caught in the grip of a force that transcended the physical. The quadruplets advanced slowly, their steps measured and deliberate, each one coming closer as if drawn by an unseen magnetism. Their presence was simultaneously intimidating and strangely alluring. The intensity in their eyes hinted at a shared understanding, a secret knowledge that they too were bound by the ancient law of the mate bond. Yet, the very idea that they could be entwined with her in such a profound way was as chilling as it was transformative. Zara's internal struggle raged in silence. Part of her screamed in terror at the overwhelming implications of this unholy union, a union born of both fate and cruelty. Another part of her, the part that had long been shackled by humiliation and despair, kindled with a rebellious spark. She realized that this moment, this shocking convergence of destiny, was not just an act of cosmic cruelty, but also an opportunity, a chance to reclaim her narrative. In the face of a bond that was both alluring and terrifying, Zara resolved that she would not be defined solely by her past suffering. Every nerve in her body vibrated with the raw energy of the moment. The cool night air mingled with the heat of the bonfire, wrapping around her like an embrace both tender and fierce. The quadruplets' eyes bore into hers, each look a silent promise of the storm that was about to break. In that profound silence, the moon's glow deepened, casting long, spectral shadows that seemed to merge with the very essence of the mate bond. As the ceremony reached its zenith, the surreal power of the connection took hold. Zara's mind swam with visions, flashes of a destiny written in both blood and fire, hints of ancient power intertwined with the cruel fate of the pack. There was a moment of pure, electrifying clarity when she understood that her path was irrevocably altered. The mate bond with all its paradoxes had chosen her, and in that fateful embrace, the future of Silver Fong was poised to change forever. The silence that followed was heavy with promise and dread, a potent mixture that left the onlookers in a state of suspended anticipation. Zara's heart, Still, thundering in her chest, whispered a silent vow. She would embrace this unsettling bond, no matter how terrifying or inexplicable, and transform it into a source of strength. The ceremony, with all its ancient power and unfathomable destiny, had ignited a spark within her, a spark that would soon blaze into an inferno, reshaping not only her life, but the entire fabric of the supernatural world. The pain of rejection. A soul shattered. In the harsh, unyielding light of the moon, the magic of the mate bond was cruelly snatched away from Zara. The silence of the ceremony shattered like fragile glass when the quadruplets, once expectant and enigmatic, unleashed their verdict with icy finality. Their voices, each laden with scorn and calculated cruelty, cut through the night like sharpened knives. "You are not ours, Zara," Jackson spat, his tone devoid of any warmth. His words were not just spoken, they rained down as physical blows, each syllable a reminder of every moment she had been deemed unworthy. In that pivotal instant, the mate bond that had surged within her began to splinter, its light dimming, under the weight of utter rejection. As Jackson's sneer morphed into a derisive laugh, Cale, Riker, and Dante echoed his sentiment. Their voices joined in a bitter chorus. "I reject you. This is a mistake. You were never meant to be." The four declarations collided in the charged air, and with each one, the bond weakened further. The force that once pulsed through Zara's veins began to recede, leaving behind a raw, aching emptiness. The physical impact of their rejection was immediate and brutal. Zara's body shuddered violently, as if struck by an invisible force. The intense, searing pain of the shattered bond shot through her like wildfire, igniting every nerve with its cruel intensity. Her skin, once alight with the promise of newfound power, now felt as if it were burning from within. A deep, scorching agony that radiated from her core. Each heartbeat reverberated like a hammer, echoing the relentless pain of being unchosen. The anguish was not confined to her body alone. Deep within her soul, a fragile structure that had withstood years of torment began to crack under the pressure of this ultimate betrayal. Every moment of humiliation, every derisive laugh, coalesced into a single, overwhelming sorrow. The spirit that had fought so valiantly to rise above its past was now shattered, scattered in a storm of despair. The quadruplet's rejection was not just a dismissal of a mate bond, it was a repudiation of her very identity. Their cold dismissal felt like a sentence, a final judgment that left her feeling utterly alone and worthless. As the words faded into the cold night, the silence that followed was laden with the heavy weight of broken dreams. The surrounding pack members, once expectant witnesses to the sacred ritual, now looked on with a mixture of pity and fear. Their eyes, wide with disbelief, bore silent witness to Zara's collapse. The once sacred space, illuminated by the gentle glow of the moon and the flickering bonfire, now seemed to shrink, suffocating her with its oppressive atmosphere. Zara's body fell to her knees, every muscle trembling as she fought to remain conscious. The rejection had fractured more than just the mate bond. It had fractured her sense of self. In that moment, the overwhelming pain and the cold, harsh reality of her abandonment seemed to strip away every last vestige of hope. Her breath came, in ragged, uneven gasps as she clutched her chest, feeling the invisible shards of rejection cutting deeper with each passing second. Yet, amid the torrent of despair, a small, nearly imperceptible spark began to glow within her. It was not the brilliant fire of triumph she had once imagined, but a faint ember, a stubborn reminder that even in the depths of heartbreak, there could be a seed of transformation. Though her body was racked with pain and her spirit teetered on the brink of collapse, that inner spark whispered of potential. It was as if the agony itself was forging a new, unbreakable will from the ruins of her shattered dreams. In the silence that followed the quadruplet's cruel decree, Zara's mind swirled with conflicting emotions. The bitter taste of rejection mingled with a deep-seated, reluctant desire to reclaim her strength. Every insult, every hurtful word, had driven her to the edge, and now, in the quiet aftermath, she felt a stir of defiance. It was as if the very act of being cast aside had laid the groundwork for something new, something powerful that was waiting to be awakened within her. The pain was overwhelming, the sorrow almost unbearable, and yet, hidden deep inside, there was a nascent resolve. The rejection had cut her open, exposing the raw vulnerability of her soul, but it had also ignited a determination to rise. The darkness of that moment, so thick and all-consuming, could not entirely smother the light that still flickered within. In that fragile ember lay the promise of a transformation, a future where she would no longer be defined by the cruelty of others, but by the power that would one day surge forth from her very being. As Zara remained on her knees in the cold, silent clearing, her eyes fixed on the ground, a single tear traced a path down her cheek, an emblem of both her despair and the quiet determination that would not let her be defeated. The pack's voices had receded, leaving behind an echo of sorrow and a whisper of what might be. In that poignant moment, the seeds of rebellion were sown. They lay dormant beneath the layers of pain, waiting for the day when the shattered fragments of her spirit would coalesce into a force strong enough to challenge the very destiny that had been cruelly imposed upon her. The night was long, and the pain of rejection cut deep. But even as despair reigned, the faint glow of inner power stirred, an unyielding promise that from the depths of her brokenness, Zara would someday rise anew. Awakening of power, defiance, born from pain. In the silent void that followed her soul-crushing rejection, a subtle tremor stirred within Zara. It began as a whisper, a faint electric pulse that tickled the edges of her consciousness as if daring her to feel. The searing pain in her chest, a constant reminder of the quadruplet's callous dismissal, gradually shifted its course. No longer a harbinger of torment, that agony began to morph into something altogether different, a raw, untamed power surging from the depths of her being. Under the cold, unyielding gaze of the moon, the flickering bonfire at the center of the clearing roared with newfound intensity. Its flames danced wildly against the dark canvas of the night sky, their movement echoing the chaotic yet beautiful transformation unfolding inside Zara. Each burst of fire seemed to mirror the electric sensation coursing through her veins, a brilliant, uncontained energy ignited by her pain. The once dull ache was now a vibrant, blazing inferno, fueled by every tear, every scornful word, and every brutal blow inflicted upon her. Zara's eyes snapped open, reflecting the mesmerizing glow of the flames. In that moment, the world around her blurred into insignificance. The echo of the pack's derisive laughter, which had once threatened to shatter her spirit, receded into the background, replaced by the pounding rhythm of her heart, a heartbeat that now pulsed with determination and fierce resolve. The searing, burning pain in her body transformed into an energy that was not meant for despair, but for defiance. It surged through her, defying the limits of mortal agony and forging something elemental and powerful. A shock of light rippled beneath her skin, a delicate cascade of shimmering energy that moved like liquid fire. It was as if the very essence of the universe had converged upon this single moment, crystallizing her suffering into a weapon of rebirth. The sensation was overwhelming, a blend of electricity and heat that crackled along her nerves, sparking at the edges of her consciousness. Every fiber of her being vibrated with the promise of transformation. In the stillness of that charged moment, Zara felt as if she were being reborn, her pain transmuting into a force that was both beautiful and deadly. She rose slowly, each movement deliberate as though testing the limits of this newfound strength. The physical world responded to her inner awakening. The cold, hard ground beneath her seemed to tremble in sympathy, and the flickering bonfire's flames leapt higher, casting long, quivering shadows that danced in tandem with her rising power. The electric hum within her was almost audible, a symphony of defiant energy that echoed through the silence of the night. In the distance, the once mocking eyes of the pack now watched in hushed astonishment. Their expressions, a mixture of disbelief and apprehension, could not ignore the transformation taking shape before them. The woman they had ridiculed, the perpetual target of their cruelty, was no longer the frail figure they remembered. Instead, a resolute force had emerged, a being whose pain had been forged into something formidable and unyielding. Zara's gaze hardened as she focused on the horizon, where the first hints of dawn flirted with the lingering darkness. With every breath, she inhaled the chill of the night, filling herself with the promise of renewal and power. The bitter taste of past humiliation was now intermingled with the exhilarating tang of potential, an affirmation that the agony of her rejection had not been in vain. It had been the catalyst for this awakening, the spark that set alight the dormant embers of her spirit. Her fists clenched as she silently vowed that no longer would she be the victim of others' cruelty. In her mind, the images of every hurtful word, every degrading sneer, coalesced into a single, irrefutable declaration. She would rise above the darkness. The raw energy pulsating within her was a testament to that vow, a palpable, living force that would not be extinguished by the harsh winds of fate. In that transformative moment, the very fabric of Zara's being was rewritten. The pain, which had once threatened to break her, now propelled her toward a destiny unbound by the limitations of her past. The electric current of her rebirth surged like a tidal wave through her veins, imbuing her with a newfound sense of purpose and defiance. It was a power that defied explanation, a mystic force, born of sorrow and adversity, destined to reshape her future. As the flames of the bonfire reached a fevered pitch, and the night around her hummed with an unspoken promise, Zara's eyes burned with the light of determination. A silent smile curved her lips, subtle yet undeniable, a sign that the spark of rebellion had taken root deep within her soul. The future stretched out before her, dark and uncertain, but now it was imbued with a tantalizing glimmer of possibility. In the echo of that charged silence, amidst the interplay of light and shadow, Zara stood as a beacon of raw, unbridled power. Her journey had taken a decisive turn. The agony of her past was now the very fuel for her rising defiance. The quiet promise of transformation lingered in the air, a whisper of hope and impending change that promised to shatter the chains of her former life. And as the first light of dawn began to chase away the lingering night, the anticipation of what was to come burned brightly within her. A silent, fierce declaration that the woman emerging from the depths of pain was destined to become an unstoppable force. Flight into the wilderness, a journey begins. The night had deepened to an inky black as Zara broke away from the remnants of the pack's territory. Every frantic step away from the oppressive clearing was fueled by the raw surge of power and defiance that had awakened within her. Behind her, the echoes of cruel rejection and mocking laughter faded into a distant memory. Ahead, the dark, mysterious forest beckoned like an uncharted frontier, a place where her newfound strength could finally take root. The forest loomed before her, vast and enigmatic, its silhouette outlined by the cold glow of the moon. Gnarled, branches reached out like skeletal fingers against a starless sky, and the rustling of unseen creatures created an eerie symphony that both unsettled and intrigued her. The air was crisp, almost biting, with a chill that pressed against her skin, yet she welcomed it as a cleansing promise of change. Every breath she drew carried the scent of damp earth and pine, a reminder that she was venturing into a world far removed from the suffocating cruelty of her past. As she ran, the forest transformed around her. What had once been a hostile, unforgiving landscape now revealed hidden paths, illuminated only by the ethereal light of the moon. The ground beneath her bare feet was uneven, strewn with fallen leaves and twisted roots that threatened to trip her. Yet each obstacle was met with her unwavering determination. The urgency of her flight was palpable. She moved with the desperate speed of a caged animal finally tasting freedom, every stride charged with the energy of a spirit reborn. In the solitude of this wilderness, isolation became both a burden and a blessing. The deep silence of the forest was a stark contrast to the cacophony of derision she'd endured. Here, there were no jeers or mocking voices, only the steady rhythm of her pounding heart and the whispered secrets of the ancient trees. In that profound solitude, Zara felt the full weight of her journey, the pain of her past, the fierce surge of her present power, and the uncertain promise of what lay ahead. The forest served as both refuge and battleground. Shadows danced in the periphery of her vision as the wind stirred the leaves, hinting at hidden dangers lurking just beyond the reach of the moonlight. Yet, those same shadows seemed to shelter her, offering a temporary sanctuary from the relentless gaze of those who had tormented her. With every step deeper into the forest, the landscape whispered tales of ancient magic and forgotten battles, as if it held the answers to the mysteries now coursing through her veins. Zara's mind raced with both fear and excitement. She could feel the pulse of the wild land around her, a raw, untamed energy that resonated with the power she had awakened within herself. The cold moonlight painted a silver path through the dense canopy, guiding her forward even as the unknown loomed. Large, each step was a declaration of her defiance, a testament to the resolve that had grown from the ashes of her shattered past. At times the forest appeared to conspire against her. Branches snatched at her clothing, and hidden roots threatened to trip her, yet these minor trials only fueled her determination. In the isolation, she allowed herself a moment of introspection. Memories of relentless abuse and humiliating rejection mingled with flashes of her rising strength, each recollection sharpening her resolve to harness this newfound power. The wilderness was not just a place of escape. It was a crucible where her destiny would be forged. As she pushed deeper into the labyrinth of trees, a subtle shift in the air foretold that her journey was far from over. The forest began to reveal hints of what lay ahead. A distant rumble like the echo of ancient drums, and flashes of movement among the shadows that were too deliberate to be mere wildlife. The sense of foreboding grew with every step, mingling with the promise of transformation. Somewhere within these tangled woods, allies or adversaries might be waiting, drawn by the same mysterious forces that had awakened her inner strength. Even as uncertainty gnawed at her, Zara embraced the dual nature of her flight. The forest's raw beauty and hidden dangers mirrored the tumult within her, a mixture of isolation and resilience, vulnerability and unyielding defiance. Each step further into the wilderness was a step away from the oppressive chains of her past, and a step toward a future that she could finally shape. The wilderness was a canvas upon which her destiny would be painted in strokes of survival, power, and rebellion. In that vast expanse of dark, whispering trees and starlit clearings, the echoes of her torment slowly faded, replaced by a burgeoning sense of hope and raw possibility. The forest was both a sanctuary from her old life and a testing ground for the strength that now burned inside her. As she ran, Zara felt not only the cold embrace of the night, but also the warming surge of her own indomitable spirit. Her flight into the wilderness was more than an escape. It was the beginning of a journey to reclaim her identity and harness the extraordinary power that had been born from her pain. The promise of transformation shimmered in the air like a mirage, urging her onward with every breath, every step. The forest whispered its ancient secrets, hinting at battles yet to come and allies yet to be found. And so, beneath the cold, unwavering light of the moon, Zara ran, not as a broken soul, but as a fierce, determined warrior on the cusp of a destiny that would soon shake the very foundations of her world. The rogue attack. First taste of battle. In the dead of night, as Zara pressed deeper into the wilderness, the quiet rhythm of her escape shattered in an instant. Out of the tangled darkness, Rogue wolves burst forth like jagged shards of glass. Their eyes glowed with a feral intensity, and snarls cut through the still air. Without warning, the ambush began. Instinct took over. Zara's body moved before her mind could catch up, a blur of adrenaline-fueled action. The first wolf lunged from the shadows, its teeth bared and eyes wild. In a heartbeat, Zara twisted aside, her reflexes sharp as a predator's. The wolf's momentum carried it past her, only to be met by the violent response of her newly awakened power. A surge of raw energy erupted from her core. Her hands, now, seemingly guided by a force beyond reason, transformed into lethal instruments. In a fluid, almost feral motion, she slashed through the air. Claws extended, and in that moment, the rogue wolf's snarling form convulsed as it fell. A silent witness to the brutal clarity of combat. The forest erupted into chaos. More wolves surged forward, their snarls merging into a single, discordant roar. The air was alive with the sound of snapping twigs, rapid footsteps, and the deep, throaty growls of enraged predators. Zara's heart pounded fiercely as she found herself caught in a maelstrom of violent urgency. Every sense was heightened. The scent of blood, the sharp tang of fear, the chill of the night mingled with the heat of battle. There was no time for thought, only instinct. Zara dodged a savage swipe and countered with a kick that sent a wolf reeling into the underbrush. The adrenaline coursing through her veins transformed pain into clarity. Every movement was precise, every strike a defiant exclamation. The rogue, wolf's ferocity was met by the unyielding force of a woman who had tasted the power of her own defiance. Each clash, each snarl, ignited within her a deeper sense of purpose. The struggle was raw and brutal, yet it carried with it an undeniable clarity. In the heat of combat, the scars of her past, the endless torment, the suffocating rejection, melted away. In their place arose something fierce and unbreakable. With every howl and every flurry of rapid movement, Zara was not just fighting for survival. She was fighting to claim her destiny. The battle unfolded in rapid, disjointed moments. A flash of movement here, a burst of energy there. The rogue wolves, cunning and relentless, moved as one, their attacks synchronized by a primal instinct. Yet Zara's transformation had granted her a speed and strength that defied expectation. The first taste of battle was both terrifying and exhilarating, a chaos of rapid strikes and desperate parries, the air thick with tension and the metallic tang of spilled blood. A rogue wolf lunged from the left, fangs glinting in the moonlight. Zara reacted with brutal precision, sidestepping and unleashing a sweeping strike that sent the creature crashing into a thick clump of brambles. Another attacked from behind. Its growl was fierce, but she whirled on her heel, her eyes ablaze with determination, and met it head-on. Every blow she delivered was a declaration, a repudiation of the life of abuse and torment that had defined her for so long. In the midst of the frenzied combat, the world seemed to narrow to the point of pure survival. The forest around her blurred into a tapestry of shadows and flickering light. The crisp sound of snapping branches and the urgent thud of her heartbeat were all that remained in her focused mind. Each ragged breath stoked the fire within her, each clash of teeth and claw driving her to push further, to dig deeper into reserves of strength she hadn't known existed. A particularly vicious wolf, its eyes burning with malice, circled in for another attack. Zara felt the weight of its intent and prepared herself. With a low, guttural cry, a sound that was both part battle cry and part anguished release, she summoned the raw power surging inside her. Energy crackled around her hands like lightning, and as the wolf sprang, it was met by a force that ripped through the night, leaving it crumpled at her feet. Slowly, as the initial chaos began to ebb, a heavy silence settled over the battleground. The rogue wolves, many of them defeated or wounded, retreated back into the shadowed undergrowth. The forest seemed to exhale, the tension dissipating into the cool night air. Zara stood amidst the scattered forms of her attackers, her chest heaving with ragged breaths, and her eyes wide with the intensity of what had just transpired. In that fleeting moment of stillness, the taste of victory was bitter, yet transformative. The raw, visceral power that had burst forth in battle was a testament to her rebirth, a physical manifestation of the inner defiance that had long smoldered beneath her pain. The fierce energy that had surged through her was not a temporary burst of adrenaline, but a sign of something deeper awakening within, a promise of strength that would soon reshape her destiny. As the silence deepened, a quiet realization took root in Zara's mind. This first taste of battle, marked by chaos and pain, had ignited a spark of transformation. The struggle had stripped away the remnants of her former self, revealing the resilient warrior beneath. Every agonizing second, every swift movement, was now woven into the tapestry of her new identity, a tapestry that glowed with the promise of an unstoppable future. The forest, once a refuge for her escape, now stood as a battleground of rebirth and raw power. Shadows whispered of challenges yet to come, and the distant rustle of leaves hinted at enemies lurking in the depths of the wilderness. But for now, amidst the scars and the lingering echoes of combat, Zara felt an undeniable shift. In the heart of battle, she had not only defended her life, she had claimed a sliver of her destiny. And that sliver, small and fierce, promised that her journey had only just begun. The mysterious silver wolf, meeting Elias. In the quiet aftermath of the battle, as the forest began to reclaim its eerie calm, Zara found herself standing alone beneath the silver glow of the moon. The adrenaline of combat still pulsed through her veins, and the air around her hummed with an electric promise of change. It was then that she saw him, a figure emerging from the shifting shadows, unlike any she had ever encountered. At first, he appeared as nothing more than a magnificent silver wolf, his fur shimmering with an otherworldly luminescence under the moonlight. His eyes, deep and knowing, held centuries of secrets and unspoken truths. There was a quiet, commanding presence about him, as if he moved with the weight of ancient knowledge. Slowly, as he stepped closer, the wolf's form began to shift and shimmer. In a breath's time, the creature's majestic lupine features softened, revealing the weathered face of an old, wise man, Elias. His name, though unspoken at first, resonated within the stillness of the night. His silver hair fell in graceful strands around his face, and his eyes, those piercing, thoughtful eyes, seemed to see right into the depths of Zara's soul. There was a calm authority in his demeanor that contrasted sharply with the chaos of moments past. Every measured step he took was deliberate, as if he had traveled many long, winding paths before arriving at this very moment. "Zara," he said softly, his voice a gentle murmur that cut through the lingering silence. His tone was both cryptic and caring, a paradox that piqued her curiosity, even as it soothed her battered spirit. "You have awakened a power that has long been dormant." His words were not forceful, yet they carried a weight that demanded attention. They hinted at mysteries beyond her understanding, secrets woven into the fabric of the world itself. Zara's eyes widened, her mind struggling to grasp the significance of his arrival. How did he know her name? What did he mean by a power awakened within her? The questions churned inside her, but in that moment, she could only listen. Elias's presence was magnetic, drawing her closer with every step he took. He gestured to the forest around them, a silent invitation to see what lay beyond the physical realm. "This world," he began, "is filled with ancient forces and hidden legacies. You carry within you a spark, a remnant of powers that once ruled over forgotten times." His voice was soft yet resonant, a blend of mystery and assurance. "You must learn to harness this gift, for it is both your burden and your salvation." As he spoke, the moonlight seemed to dance around him, accentuating every line of wisdom etched into his face. His eyes shone with a timeless light, one that had witnessed countless cycles of sorrow and rebirth. In his words, Zara sensed a depth of knowledge that surpassed mortal understanding. He spoke not merely of survival, but of destiny, a destiny that now rested squarely on her shoulders. The forest, once an indifferent backdrop, now seemed to lean in to listen. The rustling leaves, the soft sigh of the wind, even the distant call of an owl, all conspired to create an atmosphere of hushed expectancy. Every sound, every shadow, was a silent witness to the exchange between Zara and Elias. It was as though the very essence of nature had gathered to observe the meeting of two souls bound by fate. Elias stepped even closer, his gaze never wavering from hers. "Your journey has only begun," he intoned. "The trials you face, the pain you have endured, they are all part of a larger tapestry woven by ancient hands. You have been marked by destiny, and now you must decide what you will become." His words hung in the air, heavy with implication. There was no immediate promise of redemption or ease, only the undeniable truth that the path ahead was both treacherous and transformative. A shiver ran down Zara's spine as she absorbed his message. The power within her, once a source of agonizing pain, now flickered with the potential for something greater. Yet the mystery of Elias's identity, and his uncanny knowledge of her inner strength, left her with more questions than answers. Who was he truly? How many had he guided before? And what role did he play in the vast, hidden forces that now stirred inside her? Elias's calm smile was enigmatic. "I have walked these paths for many lifetimes," he confided, his tone imbued with both sorrow and hope. "I have seen the rise and fall of empires, the ebb and flow of power, and now I am here to guide you, if you will allow it." His words, laden with both promise and mystery, stirred something deep within Zara. It was as if the old man's very presence was a bridge between her past and a future that pulsed with possibility. For a long, suspended moment, the two stood, in the quiet glow of the moon, surrounded by the ancient trees that had witnessed centuries of history. The forest held its breath, as though aware that something monumental was unfolding. Elias's gaze was unwavering, filled with the weight of experience and the gentle assurance that he would not let her face the coming trials alone. Zara felt the stirring of her own resolve, a tentative spark that began to kindle within her battered soul. The fear and uncertainty that had plagued her were slowly giving way to a budding determination. In the enigmatic silence of that night, with the forest as their silent witness, she sensed that the true beginning of her journey had arrived. Guided by Elias's cryptic words and the promise of ancient power, she knew that her destiny was far from sealed. Instead, it was an unwritten chapter, waiting for her to take control. And so, beneath the unwavering light of the moon and the watchful eyes of nature itself, Zara took her first step toward embracing the path laid out before her, a path of transformation, challenge, and the relentless pursuit of a destiny that was as mysterious as it was inevitable. Bloodline revelation, the legacy of the Shadow Queen. Under the ghostly glow of the moon, Elias's calm gaze softened into one of solemn urgency. He stepped closer to Zara, his eyes reflecting the weight of centuries. In a low, deliberate tone, he began. "Zara, there is a secret buried deep within your blood, a secret that ties you to the ancient legacy of the Shadow Queen." His words fell like a heavy incantation, echoing in the stillness of the forest. For a long, suspended moment, the world around them grew silent. The only sound was the soft rustle of leaves stirred by the night breeze. Zara's heart hammered, wildly, as she tried to process his words. The name, the Shadow Queen, echoed in her mind like a distant, haunting refrain, a legend spoken of in fearful whispers among the elders of Silver Fong. The revelation struck her like a bolt of lightning, splitting her reality open. "You? What do you mean?" she managed to ask, her voice trembling with disbelief. Her eyes searched Elias's face, desperate for clarity amidst the sudden storm of emotions. The truth he was about to reveal was more than she could have imagined, a truth that would forever alter the course of her life. Elias's expression grew even more grave. Long ago, before the memory of time, there ruled a queen whose power was as dark as it was mesmerizing. She was known as the Shadow Queen, a force of nature, both feared and revered. Her blood was imbued with magic so potent that it could reshape worlds, and Zara, you carry that same blood. His words were measured, heavy with the gravity of forgotten ages. The revelation crashed over Zara in overwhelming waves. Her mind reeled, struggling to grasp the implications, disbelief mixed with raw, piercing terror. How could she be connected to such a legendary figure? Every instinct in her screamed that this was impossible, yet the intensity in Elias's eyes, the tremor in his voice, left no room for doubt. The blood that pulsed in her veins, the power she had only just begun to sense, was not random. It was a legacy, a birthright of an ancient line that had been thought lost to time. Her emotions swirled in chaotic turmoil. Shock, anger, fear, and a strange, reluctant pride battled within her. Tears welled in her eyes as she tried to steady her racing thoughts. The revelation carried with it a heavy prophecy, a legacy that could either save or doom the werewolf world. But why me? She whispered, voice thick with emotion. How could I possibly be meant for something like this? Elias knelt beside her, his voice soft yet insistent. Your destiny has been woven into the fabric of our world since the beginning. The Shadow Queen's power was sealed away for generations, hidden in the bloodline of those she touched. The elders believed that her legacy was lost, that her powers would vanish with time, but fate has a way of returning what was meant to endure. His words resonated with the ancient wisdom of a long-forgotten era. You are the key, Zara. The dormant power within you is awakening, and it comes with both great promise and peril. As he spoke, Zara's thoughts became a maelstrom of images and sensations. She saw fleeting visions of a dark throne, shrouded in mist and lit by a pale, eerie light. She felt the pull of a power that was both mesmerizing and dangerous, a power that promised to alter the balance of the werewolf world forever. The very air around her seemed to hum with the echoes of ancient magic, as if the forest itself remembered the legacy of the Shadow Queen. The gravity of the prophecy weighed heavily on her. With every word Elias uttered, the danger inherent in her newfound heritage became clearer. The legacy of the Shadow Queen was not merely a gift. It was a mantle of responsibility and a curse that could unleash chaos upon the world. Forgotten powers, long dormant, stirred in the depths of her soul. They whispered of revolution and ruin, of a time when the fabric of the supernatural realm would be torn asunder. In that moment, Zara felt both small and immense. Small in the face of an ancient, towering legacy that spanned eons, yet immense, with the sudden understanding that within her lay the potential to shape destinies. The revelation ignited a spark within her, a spark that was quickly fanned by the winds of destiny. It was a spark of hope and defiance, a promise that she could harness this legacy, no matter how dangerous it might be. Elias's eyes, filled with both sorrow and a quiet determination, locked with hers. I know this truth is heavy, and I do not ask you to embrace it lightly. But the forces that stirred the Shadow Queen's blood have not slept for long. The world is on the brink of change, and you, Zara, are at its heart. His words, like a benediction, both comforted and warned her. The path ahead was fraught with peril. Accepting her bloodline meant accepting a destiny that could pit her against foes ancient and new, a destiny that could reshape the very foundations of the werewolf world. Zara's mind raced as she tried to reconcile the enormity of what she had just learned. Her past of pain and abuse, her journey through the wilderness, and the battle that had ignited her inner power, all of it now converged into a singular, breathtaking moment of truth. She was no longer just a survivor. She was a descendant of the Shadow Queen, a vessel of forgotten power, and a pivotal force in a prophecy that could bring salvation or destruction. The forest around them seemed to hold its breath as the weight of this revelation settled. In the cool, still air, Zara felt a profound shift deep within her. The shock and emotional turmoil had begun to give way to a burgeoning sense of purpose. Even as the danger of this ancient legacy loomed large, a small, defiant hope flickered in her heart. A hope that she could forge a future where the power of the Shadow Queen would be a force for change, not destruction. In that charged moment, with Elias's cryptic yet caring words echoing in her ears, Zara understood that her journey had taken an irreversible turn. The legacy of the Shadow Queen was not a burden to be feared, but a power to be mastered. The truth was out, and the forgotten powers of her bloodline stirred with a promise of revolution. As the moon cast its pale light over the ancient trees, the seeds of destiny had been sown, seeds that would one day bloom into a force capable of reshaping the fate of all who dwelled in the supernatural realm. The prophecies wait, destiny and danger. Under the haunting glow of the moon, the prophecy loomed like a shadow that stretched across every corner of Zara's soul. Elias's revelation about the ancient legacy of the Shadow Queen had opened a door to a destiny filled with both salvation and ruin. Now, in the quiet aftermath of that profound disclosure, the weight of fate pressed heavily upon her. The prophecy, etched in the annals of forgotten lore, foretold a future that could either resurrect the waning strength of the werewolf realm or cast it into utter oblivion. Zara's mind swirled with the enormity of this revelation. The words echoed relentlessly in her thoughts, promises of power and the stark warning of catastrophic downfall. She felt as though the very air around her vibrated with the intensity of ancient forces that had lain dormant until her blood awoke. Them. Every heartbeat was a reminder that within her pulsed the legacy of the Shadow Queen, a legacy destined to shape the course of her world. As she wandered through the dim light of the forest, Zara grappled with an inner turmoil that was as fierce as the battles she had fought. On one hand, there was a burning desire to harness the power coursing through her veins, a power that could elevate her from the depths of despair to the pinnacle of supremacy. On the other, there was a crushing fear, the knowledge that this very power might be the harbinger of devastation. The prophecy was a double-edged sword, promising redemption for the werewolf realm if wielded wisely, or unleashing chaos if left unchecked. Late into the night, beneath a canopy of ancient trees that whispered secrets of bygone eras, Zara found herself questioning the very essence of her being. "Am I meant to be a savior or a destroyer?" she murmured, her voice trembling with uncertainty. The forest, silent and watchful, seemed to offer no answers, only the unyielding truth that destiny was not a choice, but an inescapable reality. The prophecy demanded greatness, but it came with the heavy burden of expectation, a burden that weighed on her like a shroud of iron. Every step she took was haunted by visions of the future, a future where the werewolf realm might be plunged into darkness by the uncontrolled surge of ancient magic. In her dreams, she saw worlds torn apart by conflict, societies crumbling under the strain of unleashed power. Yet, amid the chaos, there were also flashes of hope, images of a renewed, resplendent world where harmony was restored by a leader, born of suffering and defiance. These conflicting visions warred within her, each one a stark reminder of the tremendous responsibility now resting on her shoulders. The gravity of the prophecy was not merely an abstract concept. It was etched into every fiber of her being. Zara recalled every painful memory of abuse, every humiliating moment that had once reduced her to a broken shell, and now saw them in a new light. Each scar was a testament to her survival, a mark that signified not weakness, but the raw material from which her strength was forged. And yet, the thought of embracing such a monumental destiny was terrifying. It meant stepping into a role that could not be undone, a role that would demand sacrifices beyond what she had ever imagined. In the quiet solitude of the forest, Zara's heart pounded with both dread and determination. The voices of her past, of the quadruplet's scorn, the pack's derision, seemed to fade into a distant murmur, replaced by the more insistent call of destiny. Elias's words echoed in her mind, urging her to accept the mantle of her heritage, to use the power of the Shadow Queen's blood to reshape a fractured world. Yet, the path ahead was shrouded in uncertainty. Could she, a woman forged in pain, rise to become the beacon of hope prophesied in ancient texts? Or would the burden of expectation crush her before she could truly transform? As the night deepened, so did her internal conflict. The forest around her seemed to pulse with the hidden energy of forgotten powers, an energy that promised both peril and promise. Shadows moved in the periphery of her vision, and the cool air carried whispers of fate, hinting at challenges yet to come. It was a moment of precarious balance, a juncture where every decision could tip the scales between creation and destruction. Zara stopped beneath an ancient oak, its gnarled branches stretching out like the arms of time itself. In that silent, weighty moment, she closed her eyes and took a deep, trembling breath. The prophecy's weight was unbearable, yet within its crushing gravity, a spark of defiance still glowed. It was faint, almost imperceptible, but it was there, a reminder that even in the darkest of destinies, the power to choose one's path could ignite a revolution. With the first light of dawn teasing the horizon, Zara's mind churned with the implications of her newfound fate. The prophecy was not yet fulfilled. Its future hung in a delicate balance that only she could tip. Would she embrace the ancient power and lead the werewolf realm to salvation? Or would she succumb to the overwhelming danger it posed? The answer lay ahead, hidden in the mists of an uncertain future, waiting for her first decisive step. And so, as the night surrendered to the pale hues of morning, Zara stood at the crossroads of destiny. The weight of prophecy pressed down upon her, heavy with both promise and peril. In the silence that followed, her heart whispered a question that would determine the fate of all she held dear. A question that would lead her to a decision that could change everything. The world waited with bated breath for her choice, teetering on the edge of hope and despair as the first rays of dawn illuminated the path ahead. A choice for survival, determination amid desperation. In the quiet after the storm of revelations, Zara's mind was a turbulent sea of memories and raw emotions. The relentless flight through the wilderness had brought her to a crossroads, where the past, full of pain, abuse, and unyielding cruelty, demanded confrontation. With dawn slowly breaking over the horizon, she felt a stirring deep inside, a decision that whispered it was time to stop running. Standing beneath the ancient boughs of a towering oak, Zara took a long, steady breath. The cool morning air, now soft with the promise of a new day, caressed her bruised skin. In that solitary moment, she resolved that her life would no longer be dictated by the chains of her past. No longer would she cower in the shadows of the quadruplet's cruelty. It was time to face the darkness that had haunted her every step. Her transformation had been gradual but undeniable. Once, she had been the tormented victim, the quiet girl whose only role was to suffer in silence. Now, each scar on her body and every tear that had fallen was a testament to a strength forged in the crucible of despair. The weight of rejection had not crushed her spirit. It had reshaped it, making it more resilient, more determined. Zara's eyes, which once held fear and resignation, now burned with a fierce intensity. They glowed with the promise of defiance and the certainty of reclaiming her destiny. every memory of humiliation. The sneers, the mocking voices, the brutal blows, delivered by Jackson, Cale, Riker, and Dante, was a painful reminder of what she had endured. But as she gazed into the pale light of morning, those memories no longer seemed like shackles. Instead, they had become the fuel for her rebirth. The brutal legacy of her past would serve as the foundation upon which she would build a future, defined by courage and unwavering resolve. The specter of the quadruplets still loomed large over her thoughts. Their faces, etched in her memory with cruel precision, represented not just personal torment, but a systemic force of oppression that had ruled her life for far too long. Yet, as the first rays of light pierced through the canopy, Zara knew that the time had come to confront that threat head-on. With a heart pounding in sync with the rhythm of a warrior's drum, she embraced the certainty that survival meant more than mere escape. It required a daring return, a fight for control over her own destiny. In that fragile dawn, the forest around her seemed to pulse with the energy of renewal. The rustle of leaves, the gentle hum of the wind, and the distant call of a waking creature all spoke in a language of rebirth. Zara felt herself merging with this wild, untamed world. No longer was she merely a fugitive fleeing from pain. She was transforming into a formidable force of nature, unafraid to reclaim what was rightfully hers. Her mind raced with possibilities as she contemplated the road ahead. Would she gather allies, those who had once turned a blind eye to her suffering? Or would she walk this path alone, relying solely on the strength she had unearthed within herself? The answer was not yet clear, but one thing was certain. She would not allow fear to dictate her future any longer. Every fiber of her being now vibrated with a determination that defied the darkness of her past. In a decisive, almost reverent moment, Zara lowered her eyes to the small, faded mark on her wrist, a memento of the days when she was nothing more than a victim. That mark, once a symbol of her perceived weakness, now glimmered with an inner light. It was a silent promise to herself. No matter what lay ahead, she would rise, and she would fight. The scars, both visible and hidden, were badges of honor that proved her endurance. They were proof that from the deepest wells of despair, strength could indeed be born. Yet beneath the renewed surge of determination, a tinge of trepidation remained. The specter of her past, the relentless quadruplets with their cold, calculated malice, still haunted her thoughts. Their power was formidable, and the threat they posed was very real. But for the first time, that looming threat did not paralyze her. It galvanized her. The prospect of facing those who had tormented her fueled a burning desire for retribution and justice. As she took her first cautious steps toward the familiar boundaries of Silverfong, the forest around her seemed to whisper encouragement. Each stride was a declaration. She was no longer running from her past. She was returning to claim her future. The weight of destiny pressed upon her shoulders, a burden both daunting and exhilarating. With every step, the promise of transformation grew stronger, blending with the lingering echo of ancient prophecies and the unspoken hope of a world reborn. In that charged moment, as the cool light of dawn illuminated the path before her, Zara stood at the threshold of her next great battle. Her mind was a battleground of hope and fear, of longing for the redemption of a tortured past and the thrill of a future reclaimed by her own hands. The world she was about to re-enter was fraught with danger, but it was also ripe with the potential for change, a chance to redefine not just her own life, but the fate of the werewolf realm itself. And so, with a steady gaze fixed on the horizon, Zara took a deep, resolute breath. The choice for survival had been made. In that singular moment, the tormented victim of her past transformed into a determined survivor, ready to confront the legacy of her pain. As the forest parted before her, and the specter of the quadruplets lingered like a distant, menacing echo, one question remained. Would her newfound strength be enough to overcome the darkness that awaited? The answer lay ahead, shrouded in uncertainty, as Zara stepped forward into the unknown. Return to Silverfong. The homecoming, the forest cleared, and the boundary of Silverfong loomed ahead like a ghost from her past. Every step toward the pack's territory was heavy with dread. The cold air bit at her skin. Hostile eyes watched her from darkened doorways and shadowed corners. Every whispered judgment was like a pinprick against her soul. Zara paused at the edge of the clearing. She could almost hear the memories echoing, taunts and sneers, the cruel laughter of those who once tormented her. The world she had fled was back now, reshaped by her absence and her transformation. This was the place that had defined her pain, yet also the ground upon which she would rebuild herself. Her heart pounded in her chest. Each breath came out in shallow, visible puffs in the chill morning air. A heavy silence blanketed the entrance. There was no welcome, only the cold scrutiny of familiar faces. Old enemies and skeptical allies gathered in quiet clusters. Their stares were sharp and unyielding. Every glance felt like a verdict. She stepped forward. The gravel underfoot crunched softly, echoing in the stillness. Each step carried her deeper into a world of uneasy familiarity. The architecture of Silverfong was as brutal as her memories, a patchwork of stone and wood that had seen both cruelty and survival. Frost clung to the edges of broken windows and crumbling walls. The air smelled of damp earth and bitter regret. Murmur ran through the crowd as Zara approached the central courtyard. Some faces twisted in anger, others in disbelief. The quadruplets, once her tormentors, stood apart with expressions that shifted between cold indifference and wary uncertainty. Their eyes, still burning with a familiar cruelty, betrayed a hidden anxiety. Had the past finally come back to claim them? Or was it her presence that now unsettled their carefully maintained order? A hush fell over the gathering. Whispers grew like a low tide, words meant to remind her of every slight, every scar. "She's returned," someone muttered. "The runt who dared to run," sneered another. The voices carried on the wind, harsh and unrelenting. In that moment, Silverfong was a theater of judgment, every soul present a silent jury ready to pass its verdict on the girl who had once been broken. Yet Zara's eyes shone with a defiant light. Her gait was steady and unhurried. The pain of the past, the relentless memories of abuse and rejection, had not been erased. Instead, they had been forged into something stronger, a quiet, fierce determination. She was no longer the timid, frightened girl they had tormented. She had changed. The scars on her body were marks of survival, and the power within her was now undeniable. She moved past clusters of whispering pack members. Each whispered remark stung like a shard of ice, but she pressed on, feeling the cold air fill her lungs. With each determined step, the tension was palpable. The courtyard, once a place of forced submission, now vibrated with uncertainty. Could the old order be challenged by the force of a woman reborn? The atmosphere was thick with questions and unspoken challenges. In one shadowed corner, an old ally, once a silent bystander, watched her with conflicted eyes. His face was etched with regret and awe. He had seen her suffer, had seen her vanish into the night. And now, as she strode back into Silverfong, there was a glimmer of hope in his gaze, a hope that perhaps change was finally coming. But even his cautious expression could not erase the hard lines of suspicion etched on the faces of others. The quadruplets finally stepped forward as a collective force. Their presence was commanding, yet even they seemed unsure how to react. They exchanged glances, their eyes flickering with something like recognition, perhaps a fear of what she had become. Jackson's lips twitched, a silent snarl betraying his inner turmoil. They had once ruled with unchecked cruelty, but now the power dynamics had shifted in a way that none could ignore. Zara halted in the center of the courtyard. The silence was overwhelming, as if the very air held its breath. Every eye in Silverfang was on her. The judgment of the past mingled with the uncertainty of the future. The cold, harsh light revealed every line of pain on her face and every scar that told her story. And yet, in that moment of tense stillness, a new narrative was beginning to unfold. She raised her chin slowly, and in that simple act, defiance radiated from her like a beacon. The courtyard, with its icy stairs and whispered judgments, was no longer just a place of suffering. It was a battleground where the old order met a new, formidable force. Zara's transformation was complete. No longer the broken victim, but a survivor with the strength to challenge fate itself. The wind stirred, carrying with it the soft murmur of leaves and the distant promise of change. In the charged silence, the only sound was her steady heartbeat, a reminder that she was alive, stronger than before. Every step, every determined gaze, echoed with the weight of a destiny she was now ready to claim. As the first light of dawn began to break over the horizon, Silverfang's familiar structures appeared both ancient and unyielding, a fortress of the past that now faced the possibility of revolution. The hostile stares and whispered judgments would not silence her. They would only fuel the fire within, a fire that promised retribution, transformation, and a new beginning. And so, standing in the cold, uncertain light of homecoming, Zara took a deep, resolute breath. The path ahead was fraught with challenges, old enemies, and skeptical allies. But in that moment, with the world watching and the weight of her past pressing upon her, she stepped forward into her destiny, ready to reshape the future of Silverfang once and for all. The confrontation, facing the quadruplets. The air crackled with tension as Zara stepped into the center of the courtyard, her gaze locking onto the four figures who had haunted her every waking moment. The quadruplets, Jackson, Kale, Riker, and Dante, formed a tight semicircle around her. Their expressions were a mix of disbelief, seething anger, and a cold, renewed sense of entitlement. The courtyard's silence was heavy, broken only by the soft crunch of gravel underfoot and the distant murmur of an anxious crowd. Jackson was the first to speak, his voice low and cutting. "So, the runt has returned. You dare come back here?" His tone dripped with condescension, his golden eyes narrowed in contempt. Kale's response was equally scathing. "You think you can defy us after all you've been? You're nothing but a mistake." His words, sharp as shattered glass, sliced through the heavy air. Riker's expression was inscrutable, his icy blue eyes glinting with a hint of conflict. "We built this pack, Zara," he said softly, but his tone carried an unmistakable edge of authority. "Don't think for a moment that you can undo the order we've established." Dante's voice, quiet but laden with intensity, added, "You left us no choice, but now you expect to waltz back into our world and claim a new destiny. This is our domain. You belong to our past." Zara felt her pulse thunder in her ears as the quadruplets' words echoed around her. For years, their cruelty had defined her, marking her as a broken, insignificant outcast. But now, the fire that had been kindled in the darkest moments of her life blazed within her. Her eyes shone with defiance, and her voice, when it finally emerged, was steady and resolute. "I'm not here to beg for forgiveness," she declared, her tone slicing through the contempt like a beacon of raw determination. "I'm here to claim what is mine." Her words hung in the air, and for a heartbeat, even the quadruplets paused. The weight of her transformation was undeniable. Zara had changed. No longer the trembling victim of their relentless abuse, she now stood as a force of nature, unbowed and unbroken. Jackson scoffed, stepping forward with a dismissive sneer. "Claim what? Your pathetic dreams?" His voice rose, full of arrogance and scorn, but Zara met his gaze with unwavering resolve. I claim my right to live, to be more than a tool for your cruelty. She shot back, every word charged with the echoes of a lifetime of suffering and a newfound promise of retribution. I claim my destiny, one you never had the power to define. Kale's eyes flashed dangerously. You're delusional if you think you can just rewrite the rules. He spat, his tone a bitter mix of anger and disbelief. Riker shifted slightly, the tension in his posture betraying his inner conflict. This isn't about rewriting rules. It's about respecting the order that has kept our pack intact, he said. But his voice wavered as if unsure whether to rally with his brothers or challenge the woman standing before them. Dante's quiet intensity filled the space between his words. We rejected you, Zara. We cast you aside. And now you come back with this? His hand gestured vaguely at her, a silent accusation of betrayal and audacity. In that charged moment, Zara's eyes burned with an inner light that refused to be dimmed. I was rejected by you, she replied, her voice calm but firm. But that rejection did not break me. It forged me into someone who understands the true meaning of strength. I am no longer the frightened girl you once knew. I am a survivor. And I am here to stand against the tyranny of the past. The courtyard seemed to hold its breath. The quadruplets exchanged glances, their faces masks of conflicting emotions. Disbelief, anger, and a flicker of uncertainty danced across their expressions. For the first time, the established order trembled in the wake of her defiance. Jackson's tone turned icy as he stepped closer. You think you can challenge us? Our power, our legacy, runs deeper than your petty defiance, he hissed, his eyes darkening with venom. Zara's response was swift and resolute. Your legacy is built on fear and cruelty, she said, her words crisp and unapologetic. I refuse to be defined by your mistakes, by the pain you inflicted. I have forged my own path, and it leads to a future where I reclaim my worth. Murmur rippled through the gathered onlookers, a mixture of shock and anticipation. The quadruplets, so used to their unchallenged dominance, found themselves facing a force that they could neither control nor ignore. The palpable hostility in the air thickened with each passing second. For a moment, time seemed to stretch. The tension was almost tangible, a line drawn in the cold night air, where the old order clashed with a new emerging power. Zara's gaze was unflinching as she looked directly into the eyes of each quadruplet, her presence a challenge and a promise of inevitable change. You no longer hold dominion over my fate, she continued, her voice rising slightly, carrying every ounce of the determination she had built from years of hardship. I am not the broken girl you left behind. I am the embodiment of resilience. And if you choose to stand in my way, know this. I will fight for every right that was stolen from me. Silence fell again, heavy and electric. The quadruplet's eyes narrowed, and for a fleeting moment, the courtyard was a battleground of unspoken challenges. The raw emotion was almost too much to bear. Anger, defiance, and the lingering sting of past wounds converged in a single, potent moment of truth. The confrontation reached its zenith as the night itself seemed to tremble under the weight of their clash. Every whispered judgment, every venomous sneer, now collided with Zara's unwavering resolve. The quadruplets, symbols of an oppressive past, found themselves at the precipice of a new era, a time when the power to define destiny was shifting, irrevocably, into the hands of someone they had long scorned. The moment teetered on the edge of eruption, leaving every listener and onlooker on edge. The silence was not a pause, but a pregnant breath before the inevitable storm. In that charged atmosphere, as the old order confronted the relentless force of her defiance, Zara's challenge hung in the air, a defiant promise that her destiny would no longer be dictated by the cruelty of the past. And so, as the cold night bore witness to this dramatic face-off, the quadruplets' authority was called into question. and the echoes of her words promised a future of transformation. The confrontation was far from over, and the tension in the courtyard was only the beginning of a battle that would reshape their world. The stakes were higher than ever, and as each heartbeat echoed with the pulse of impending change, the question remained. Would the quadruplets yield to this new, indomitable force, or would the storm of conflict tear the very fabric of Silverfang apart? The Elder's judgment, prophecy, and power collide. A heavy silence fell over Silverfang as the murmurs of discontent turned to stunned awe. From the far end of the courtyard, amidst the gathered pack members and the lingering tension between old enemies, a solitary figure emerged. Clad in robes that spoke of a time long past, Elder Riven advanced with a measured, authoritative gait. His eyes, sharp and penetrating, swept over the assembly as if reading every hidden thought. His presence carried the weight of prophecy, and with it, an ominous decree that would shatter the established order. Silence. Elder Riven's voice rang out, low and resonant, slicing through the murmurs. Every ear in the courtyard fell silent. His words, though few, carried an unmistakable gravity. Zara's return is not a mere accident. The ancient prophecy has spoken. She must be protected at all costs. His decree echoed across the cold stone courtyard, sending ripples of shock and uncertainty through the pack. The quadruplets, who had dominated Silverfang for so long, exchanged wary glances. Their faces, once unflinching in their cruelty, now betrayed conflict. Jackson's eyes flashed with anger and disbelief, while Kale's jaw tightened in silent protest. Riker's gaze, normally cold and calculating, wavered with something like reluctant acknowledgement. Dante, his expression dark and unreadable, seemed torn between a desire to reclaim old power and the fear of a destiny that he could not control. Elder Riven continued, his tone firm, yet imbued with a sorrowful compassion. "The prophecy is clear," he intoned. "A child born of the blood of the Shadow Queen, and the strength of 4 alphas, shall either save our realm or bring about its ruin. Zara, though once scorned and rejected, now carries that ancient legacy within her. To protect her is to safeguard the future of our kind." His words fell like heavy stones upon the gathered crowd. Every face, every whispered word, now spoke of an impending change that none could ignore. The pack members shifted uneasily, and even the natural sounds of the night, the rustle of leaves, the distant cry of a lone wolf, seemed to join the cadence of his proclamation. The shock was palpable. Some looked on with pity, others with veiled hostility. The very foundation of the old hierarchy trembled under the weight of the prophecy. Silverfang, a bastion of tradition and ruthlessness, now found itself facing an unknown future, one that might upend everything they had built. The quadruplets, in particular, were caught in a storm of conflicting emotions. Their authority, once unquestioned, was now challenged by forces beyond mortal control. Jackson's voice, rough with suppressed rage, broke the silence. "What does this mean for us?" he demanded, his tone a mix of fury and desperation. "We have ruled these lands for generations. How can a forsaken girl bear such power and change the order?" His question hung in the air, heavy with the burden of centuries of dominance and the fear of an unpredictable future. Kale's eyes narrowed as he spoke next, his voice tight with indignation. "This prophecy, it threatens everything we've known. Our legacy, our right to rule, it's all under threat if we are forced to protect her." His words, though spoken in anger, revealed an underlying anxiety about losing control. Riker, typically silent, offered a measured yet uncertain response. "Duty binds us to the pack, yet desire for power and fear of change tear at our hearts. We stand at a crossroads, and the path forward is unclear." Dante's quiet interjection carried a weight of its own. "The prophecy is not our choice," he said, his tone even and cold. It demands we protect her, for in doing so, we protect our very future. His words, though matter of fact, resonated with the inevitability of fate. The quadruplets were caught between their innate hunger for power and the undeniable decree of destiny. Their internal battle was visible in every furrowed brow and clenched fist. Elder Riven's gaze swept over them once more, his eyes filled with the solemn knowledge of ages. "You must understand," he said softly, "that this is not a challenge to your authority, but a call to embrace a new era. The forces that stirred the blood of the Shadow Queen are awakening. If you choose to fight against this change, you may find that the future will not be yours to command." His words were both a warning and an invitation, a stark reminder that the old order was crumbling, and something entirely new was rising from its ashes. In that charged moment, the air in Silver Fong became thick with anticipation and dread. The hostile stares and whispered judgments that had defined Zara's past were now overlaid with the inescapable power of prophecy. The pack stood on the precipice of transformation, their identities and legacies poised to be rewritten by forces older than themselves. Elder Riven's final words cut through the tension like a blade. "Protect her, for in her lies the hope and the danger of our kind. The decision is not merely yours, but it is written in the blood of our ancestors." With that, he turned and slowly receded into the gathering shadows, leaving the courtyard echoing with uncertainty and the unspoken promise of impending change. Zara stood motionless in the center of the courtyard, her heart pounding as she absorbed the weight of his decree. The fate of Silver Fong and her own destiny now hung in a delicate balance. The quadruplets, once masters of their domain, were now mere mortals in the face of ancient prophecy. The night was heavy with foreboding, and every whispered word, every guarded glance, hinted at the revolution that was about to unfold. As the pack retreated into uneasy silence, the intensity of the moment pressed upon Zara. The prophecy's weight was hers to bear, and with it came the promise of both salvation and ruin. The future was uncertain, and the path ahead fraught with peril. But one thing was clear: the era of the old order was coming to an end. The stage was set, and, with the ominous decree echoing in her ears, Zara realized that her next decision would not only determine her fate, but the fate of them all. Battlefield transformation. The unleashing of Zara's fury. The quiet dread that had filled Silver Fong moments ago shattered into an explosion of chaos as battle erupted around Zara. The ground trembled with the thunder of clashing bodies and the roars of enraged wolves. In the midst of the melee, her newfound power began to manifest in a way that redefined the entire conflict. The air ignited with the scent of burning wood and ozone. Flames from torches and bonfires leapt higher, casting erratic, flickering shadows that danced on the rough, blood-stained terrain. As chaos spread, Zara's eyes locked onto her adversaries, a horde of foes both familiar and strange, their snarls and battle cries merging into a cacophonous roar that echoed across the battlefield. Time seemed to warp as the moment intensified. Zara's body surged with raw, unbridled energy. Every nerve sparked like live wire. The pain of her past, every harsh word and every brutal blow, had coalesced into a powerful force now coursing through her veins. She could feel it, a fierce, burning fury that rose from deep within her chest. In that instant, the very air around her crackled with electricity. Her transformation was nothing short of cinematic. With a sudden, almost explosive movement, Zara raised her hands, and tendrils of searing energy burst forth like streams of molten light. They whipped through the air, slashing at the oncoming attackers with the precision of a sharpened blade. Shadows twisted and recoiled as if repelled by an unseen force. In that moment, the battlefield seemed to bend to her will. Every flash of fire and every surge of energy a vivid testament to her rebirth. A rogue adversary charged at her, snarling as he lunged forward. In response, Zara's fury erupted. The raw energy coalesced into a shield of shimmering fire that engulfed her form. The heat was overwhelming, distorting the air like a mirage, and when the wolf collided with the blaze, its growl was cut short in a burst of charred fury. Around her, other enemies hesitated, caught in the mesmerizing dance of flames and shadows that now marked her presence. Every strike she delivered was a declaration, a proclamation that the girl they once tormented had risen as a force of nature. Her movements were swift and fluid, each step choreographed by instinct and tempered by years of suppressed agony. The battlefield transformed into her stage. Sparks flew with every contact, and the ground bore the scars of her unleashed power. Fiery trails marked her path, as though she were leaving a luminous signature on the dark canvas of war. The clash was rapid and relentless. Amid the din of battle, Zara's eyes shone with a fierce intensity, reflecting the inferno within. With every adversary that dared to come close, she retaliated with a combination of raw strength and newly discovered agility. A burst of black flames shot from her fingertips, incinerating an incoming strike, while a sweeping motion of her arm sent a flurry of sparks cascading onto the nearest foe, leaving them staggering back in disarray. The visuals were breathtaking, a maelstrom of flickering fire, surging energy, and twisting shadows that seemed to have a life of their own. The night sky above, once a serene canopy, now pulsed with the glow of the inferno below. The distant howls of her enemies mingled with the crackle of flames and the rapid thud of her heartbeat, each sound intensifying the surreal cinematic quality of the scene. As the battle raged, the momentum shifted in a heartbeat. The enemy ranks, once confident in their numbers, began to falter under the relentless barrage of Zara's wrath. The air around her shimmered with the intensity of her power, a force so palpable that even the wind seemed to bend in submission. It was as if the very elements of nature had become allies, aiding her in the struggle for survival and dominion over her fate. Every surge of energy from her transformed body sent ripples of raw power that redefined the rules of engagement on the battlefield. The chaotic interplay of fire and shadow underscored the metamorphosis taking place within her. No longer was she a victim of cruelty. She was the architect of her own destiny, her rage fueling a transformation that was as beautiful as it was terrifying. In the midst of the fray, a hush fell over the chaos for a fraction of a second, a pregnant pause that magnified every heartbeat, every flicker of flame. It was then that Zara's eyes met those of a lone adversary across the battlefield. In that charged moment, the raw fury in her gaze sent a silent promise that her transformation was only the beginning. The battlefield, once a mere arena of survival, had become a crucible where every blow and every spark heralded the birth of a new era. As the clamor of battle surged back with renewed intensity, Zara's inner resolve burned brighter than ever. The remnants of her past were scattered like ashes around her, and in their place, a future forged in the fires of defiance began to emerge. The very landscape trembled beneath the force of her unleashed fury, setting the stage for a confrontation that would alter the balance of power. With each rapid, emotionally charged moment, the stakes escalated. The fury that had been bottled up for so long now roared with the promise of vengeance and rebirth. The battlefield was not just a place of strife. It was the forge where Zara's destiny was being hammered into shape, one searing blow at a time. And as the night bore witness to her transformation, the question that hung in the charged air was undeniable. What will become of the enemy who once ruled her fate when faced with the unyielding force of a woman reborn in fire and fury? The answer, cloaked in the roar of the flames and the shattering echoes of battle, would soon come to define not only her future, but the very soul of the world around her. The climactic confrontation, Malachi's challenge. The tension broke like a dam. Out of the swirling chaos of battle, an imposing figure emerged. Malachi, the alpha conqueror. He moved with a predatory grace that spoke of power and unyielding authority. His eyes, cold and calculating, fixed on Zara as if he had been waiting for this moment all his life. His presence silenced the melee around them, drawing every lingering gaze. Malachi's claim over Zara was as mysterious as it was undeniable. "You," he growled, his voice low and dangerous. "You are mine by fate." His words cut through the din. There was a challenge in his tone, a challenge that demanded submission, yet hinted at something far darker than mere dominance. Zara's pulse surged. Her heart pounded with defiance. She squared her shoulders. "No," she hissed, "I am not yours." Every word was a spark, igniting the air between them. They circled each other on the blood-stained ground. Every step was measured, every glance a clash of wills. Malachi lunged first. In a flash, his powerful fist struck the air near her cheek. Zara dodged, her movements sharp and fluid, born of fury and the hard lessons of survival. The blow grazed her hair. She retaliated with a fierce kick aimed at his midsection. Their blows collided in rapid succession, each strike a statement of power, each parry a testament to their unyielding resolve. Short sentences marked the combat. Strike, block, counter. The rhythm of their battle was relentless. Malachi's strength was overwhelming. His every move spoke of a lifetime of conquest. Yet Zara was no longer the frightened girl they once tormented. Now, every fiber of her being radiated raw power. Her fists flew with precision, her kicks, swift and unrelenting, aimed to break the chains of destiny. The ground trembled beneath their combat. Sparks flew as fist met flesh, and the sound of clashing energy echoed through the air. Malachi's eyes narrowed. "You dare defy me?" he spat, a snarl in his tone that was both challenge and threat. His muscles rippled as he attacked again, a flurry of strikes that forced Zara to retreat. But she did not yield. She countered with a burst of energy that sent him staggering backward. Each blow was brutal. Every hit carried the weight of fate. The stakes were high. The cost of this confrontation could shatter destinies. The clash was visceral, a brutal dance of raw power and determination. Malachi's power surged with a dark intensity, while Zara's newfound strength blazed like wildfire. Their bodies moved in a blur of rapid, dynamic action. Punches, kicks, and energy blasts intermingled in an explosion of sound and fury. Malachi's voice cut through the clamor. "Your destiny is written," he roared as he delivered a crushing uppercut. Zara staggered, pain flashing across her determined face. But even as she reeled, a spark of defiance reignited within her. "I choose my own destiny," she replied, her voice trembling with both pain and unwavering resolve. The battlefield became their arena, a place where every drop of sweat and every cry of exertion testified to the high stakes. The air around them shimmered with the raw energy of their clash. Shadows danced, mingling with the flicker of nearby torches, creating a kaleidoscope of light that underscored the surreal intensity of the moment. Their exchange grew fiercer, each combatant pushing their powers to the edge. Malachi unleashed a torrent of dark energy. It crackled around him like a cloak of shadows. In response, Zara summoned a brilliant flare of light that burst forth from her core, a dazzling counter that lit up the night sky. Their energies collided, in a shockwave that rocked the very foundations of Silver Fong. The sound was deafening, a roar that seemed to tear through the fabric of destiny itself. Short, explosive moments defined the fight. A swift punch here, a rapid kick there. Each maneuver was executed with an urgency that left no time for hesitation. Malachi's movements were almost regal in their brutality, while Zara's were driven by years of pent-up anguish and newfound hope. The cost of destiny loomed over them, a silent specter promising that the outcome would reshape their world forever. In a final heart-stopping exchange, Malachi locked eyes with Zara. For an instant, time seemed to freeze. The world around them faded into a blur of shadows and light. His voice, low and foreboding, murmured, "This is your fate, and mine." It was a declaration loaded with the weight of ancient prophecy and the promise of ruin. Zara's gaze blazed with defiance as she steadied herself. "My fate is mine to choose," she retorted, every word a battle cry. Her fists clenched, her energy surged, and the air around her hummed with the power of a destiny redefined. The intensity of the moment was overwhelming, a brutal contest, of wills where the ultimate cost of destiny hung in the balance. As their confrontation reached its fevered pitch, the battlefield around them erupted into chaotic flashes of light and dark, of raw power and searing pain. The listeners were left, on the edge, breathless with anticipation, as the two forces collided. The ultimate cost of their struggle, the price that would determine not only their own fates but the future of the entire realm, remained shrouded in mystery. In that charged, explosive moment, the night bore witness to a confrontation that promised to alter the course of destiny itself. Malachi's challenge, laced with the threat of absolute dominance, met the indomitable spirit of a woman who had risen from the ashes of her past. And as their powers clashed in a cataclysm of fire and shadow, one question remained. What will be the cost when destiny and defiance collide? Death and rebirth, the ultimate transformation. In the aftermath of the titanic clash, the battlefield fell eerily silent. The roar of combat had faded, leaving only the ragged breathing of survivors and the soft crackle of dying flames. Zara lay amidst the wreckage, her body battered, her spirit teetering on the edge between life and death. Every ache and bruise bore witness to the ferocity of her battle, a brutal symphony of pain and defiance that had brought her to this fateful precipice. Her chest heaved as she struggled to draw in shallow, tremulous breaths. The air around her was thick with the metallic scent of blood and the acrid tang of burnt energy. In that suspended moment, time slowed to a crawl. Each heartbeat echoed like a distant drum, marking the fragile line between what was and what might be. Zara's eyes fluttered closed, her vision blurred by a haze of exhaustion and agony, as the weight of her ordeal pressed down upon her like a shroud. Then, as if summoned by the depths of her suffering, a miraculous surge of power began to awaken within her. It started as a subtle warmth at the core of her being, a faint, glowing ember hidden beneath layers of pain and despair. Slowly, that ember flared into a roaring flame, igniting every fiber of her battered flesh. The transformation was both excruciating and awe-inspiring. The agony she had endured now served as the crucible for her rebirth. As the surge intensified, Zara's skin began to shimmer, shifting from its bruised, battered hue to one that glowed with an ethereal radiance. It was as if the pain had been transmuted into energy, melting away the scars of her past. Her body, once defined by the remnants of abuse and torment, now radiated a powerful, almost otherworldly brilliance, a luminous fusion of molten gold and black fire. The metamorphosis was nothing short of transformative. With each heartbeat, her limbs grew lighter, more agile, as if freed from the constraints of her previous mortality. The air around her seemed to dance with sparks of her emerging power. Golden flames, fierce and fluid, coiled around her like living tendrils. They merged with streaks of shadowy obsidian fire, a duality that symbolized the light and darkness of her legacy. In that moment, Zara was no longer the broken victim of her past. She was being reborn, a phoenix rising from the ashes of her shattered existence. Every sensation was heightened beyond measure. The searing heat of the flames coursing through her veins was both a torment and a blessing, a relentless reminder that she had been transformed by her own suffering. With each pulse of energy, the pain seemed to recede, replaced by a deep, resounding power that redefined her very essence. The agony of battle, the sting of every blow, and the despair of rejection coalesced into a miraculous surge that reshaped her destiny. As the transformation reached its zenith, Zara's eyes snapped, open, now glowing with a fierce, unyielding light. In their depths burned a determination that had been forged in the crucible of death and rebirth. The world around her blurred into an explosion of colors, fiery gold intermingled with deep, inky black, and for a moment she seemed to stand, suspended in a realm between life and legend. The air itself vibrated with the promise of her new power, a palpable force that rippled through the very fabric of reality. In the midst of this awe-inspiring change, the battlefield lay quiet and forgotten, a stage upon which the old order had been dismantled. The fallen and the wounded, once symbols of chaos, now served as silent witnesses to Zara's ultimate transformation. The energy that had once surged in violent bursts now settled into a calm, yet unstoppable force that emanated from her core. It was a power that promised both retribution and renewal, a power that could reshape the fate of not only her own life, but the entire werewolf realm. Zara's metamorphosis was complete, a rebirth that left her a living embodiment of raw, unbridled destiny. Her form, awash in molten gold and black fire, radiated an aura of invincibility. The flames that danced along her skin whispered of promises fulfilled and battles yet to come. In her transformed state, she was more than a survivor. She was a force of nature, a harbinger of change destined to challenge the very foundations of her world. Yet even as the brilliance of her transformation lit up the darkness, a bittersweet sorrow lingered in her eyes. The cost of her rebirth was etched in every line of her scarred flesh, a poignant reminder of the price she had paid for this new power. The loss of her former self, the memories of pain and betrayal, were now interwoven with the luminous threads of her destiny. In that delicate balance of agony and triumph, Zara recognized that her journey was far from over. As the echoes of battle receded into silence, a profound stillness took hold. In that quiet aftermath, the world seemed to hold its breath, awaiting the next chapter in Zara's saga. The transformation had not only redefined who she was, but also set the stage for the challenges that lay ahead. The flicker of hope and the promise of retribution burned bright within her, a beacon to all who had ever suffered under tyranny. In the charged silence of that moment, as the first light of dawn began to break through the darkness, Zara stood, reborn, a warrior of fire and shadow, forged from the depths of her own despair. The ultimate transformation had been achieved, but the road forward was shrouded in uncertainty. Every step would be fraught with peril, every decision laden with the weight of destiny. And yet, in that awe-inspiring instant, with the world at her feet and the flames of rebirth dancing upon her skin, Zara knew that she was ready to embrace the future, no matter what price it might demand. Epilogue. A new dawn and a choice of destiny. As the remnants of battle faded into memory, a quiet stillness embraced Silver Fong. The first gentle rays of dawn crept over the horizon, casting soft, golden light upon the scarred earth. In a secluded chamber, surrounded by the muted echoes of the night's strife, Zara slowly awoke. The air was cool and calm, a striking contrast to the chaos that had once ruled these grounds. Yet beneath this tender tranquility, the energy of transformation still pulsed softly, a promise of renewal and hope. Zara's eyes fluttered open to a world that now seemed both familiar and entirely transformed. The pain of the past lingered in the shadows, but it no longer defined her. In its place shone the steady glow of a new beginning, a beacon of strength forged in fire and loss. As she rose from a bed of worn furs and scattered remnants of the battle, she sensed a profound change within herself. Every scar told a story of survival, every ache a reminder of the trials she had overcome. But now, those marks were no longer wounds, they were symbols of rebirth. In the soft morning light, the courtyards of Silver Fong stirred with hesitant reconciliation. The quadruplets, once fierce tyrants, now gathered at a respectful distance. Their expressions were a mixture of awe, regret, and reluctant acceptance. Jackson's eyes, which had burned with cruelty in the past, now shone with a quiet, conflicted respect. Kale's face bore the lines of hard-fought battles and silent remorse, while Riker and Dante, too, showed signs of understanding that the old ways had crumbled before the force of true transformation. Elder Riven, his presence still, commanding despite the passing of the night's tumult, approached slowly. His voice, gentle yet imbued with the weight of prophecy, broke the silence. "Zara," he said, each syllable measured and reverent. "The dawn brings with it a new era. You have shown us what lies in the heart of true strength. It is time for us to heal and embrace the future." His words rippled through the gathering, softening hardened stares and easing old tensions. In a quiet corner of the hall, Zara's gaze fell upon a small bundle, swaddled in soft linens. It was her child, a tender, living symbol of both her past struggles and the bright promise of what was to come. The child's delicate features, a mirror of Zara's own fiery eyes, glowed with an untamed spirit that echoed the legacy of the ancient powers she now carried. The gentle cooing of the infant was like a soft lullaby in the midst of newfound peace, a reminder that life, in all its fragile beauty, continued to blossom even after the darkest night. The air was thick with the scent of hope and reconciliation. Former adversaries now shared quiet glances of understanding, recognizing that the journey ahead would require unity and compassion. Yet, amid this burgeoning harmony, Zara felt the weight of a profound choice pressing upon her soul. The path before her was split into two, one that led to becoming a solitary, powerful alpha, an unyielding force that would rule with the strength of her newly awakened powers, and another that offered the promise of a life unburdened by the chains of the past, where she could forge her own destiny, free from the shadow of former torment. In the soft glow of dawn, as the remnants of battle and sorrow lay scattered like embers across Silver Fong, Zara stood at the crossroads of destiny. The world around her was quiet, yet charged with unspoken possibilities. She thought of the pain that had shaped her, the fury that had transformed her, and the tender hope embodied in the eyes of her child. Each memory was a stepping stone, leading her to this singular moment of choice. Her heart beat steadily, echoing the new rhythm of her existence. In that sacred pause between night and day, Zara felt the pull of her own will, a force more potent than the echoes of old tyrannies. With a deep, resolute breath, she made her decision. She would embrace the mantle of a powerful alpha, not as a tyrant of old, but as a guardian of new hope and unity. Yet, she would not forsake the tenderness of her past or the lessons etched into her soul by pain. Instead, she would forge a path where strength and compassion intertwined, a new way of leading that honored both her heritage and her vision of a brighter future. The quadruplets watched in silence, their eyes reflecting a mixture of pride and sorrow. Some seemed to understand that the old order was irrevocably broken. Others, still clinging to memories of control, felt the sting of a fading era. Elder Riven's gaze, soft yet unyielding, met hers with a silent benediction, a reminder that destiny was not fixed, but a living, breathing force that could be reshaped with each courageous step. In that final, poignant moment, as the first, true light of day bathed the ancient stone of Silver Fong, Zara cradled her child close. The gentle warmth of new life mingled with the bittersweet remnants of loss, and in that union lay the promise of a new beginning. The echoes of survival, transformation, and hope resonated in the quiet morning air, a hymn to a future that was both uncertain and full of infinite possibility. The dawn was breaking, and with it, a new chapter in Zara's journey was about to unfold. Her choice was clear, a destiny that was not bound by the shadows of her past, but illuminated by the strength of her spirit. And as the light grew, so too did the promise of a future that would forever bear the mark of her indomitable will, a future where hope, rebirth, and the courage to choose one's own path reigned supreme.